Story 1.
My wife insisted it was just a one-time mistake, until I discovered shocking evidence of her cheating. Let's start with D-Day in the spring of 2017, when my wife and I were around 30 years old and had been together since our college days. We also had a child in elementary school. Initially, I suspected my wife of having an affair, but when I expressed my concerns, she immediately denied it. Over time, my fears were confirmed, and I confronted her with evidence. Despite her persistent denial, she eventually confessed, crying and asking for forgiveness. At that point, I felt like demanding her immediate departure and starting the divorce process. It's crucial to share how the events leading to the revelation of her infidelity unfolded. Even though it didn't involve physical closeness, plans for an unfaithful meeting were already in place. A few months before that crucial day, I noticed my wife using her phone more cautiously. She would turn away when using it and quickly put it away when I entered the room. She even took it to the bath or shower, which seemed strange. But I didn't think much of it at first. One incident caught my attention. We used to freely share our phones, but the day I wanted her number to find a new restaurant, something seemed off. I suggested going to a new restaurant, but my phone was charging. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked for her phone number. When she asked why, I explained, but she held onto her phone while showing me the menu. This, along with other behaviors, raised my suspicions. After pondering for days, I finally asked her directly if something was going on with someone else. She reassured me, citing a friend's personal issue and the need for privacy. Despite her reassurances, an uneasy feeling persisted. Despite my efforts, the discomfort lingered, suggesting more to the situation. The suspicious behavior appeared to stop, or so I thought. Then, a significant incident occurred, further confirming my suspicions. Approaching this delicately, one afternoon during an intimate moment, she reached for her phone, expressing a desire to record the process on video. This was unusual, as she usually felt insecure around cameras. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked about the purpose. A little embarrassed, she said she wanted to observe herself. Seeing this new, adventurous side, I agreed. She set up a camera, filming herself on a self-camera, capturing every detail of her intense engagement. I was pleasantly surprised by her active participation, as she usually did this only at my request. But this time, she readily agreed, without taking her eyes off the camera, radiating captivating enthusiasm. The sounds she made added to the intensity of the situation and captivated me. When the performance reached its peak, she went further, showcasing the achievement in front of the camera. I regret acknowledging the future importance of this video, but it's definitely significant. Despite the clear deviation from our usual behavior, I chose not to make a big deal out of it, not wanting to embarrass or discourage her from trying new things. Instead, I tried to keep things normal, secretly hoping we could explore this new experience together. Since my wife and I have been in a committed relationship since age 20, her sudden change in character triggered a familiar, instinctive feeling in me. A few weeks after the video incident, I decided to check her phone for suspicious messages or photos, but found nothing unusual. Later, I remembered we used the backup function together, saving pictures automatically to Google Photos. Realizing this, I logged into my laptop using her credentials for further investigation. When checking her email, everything seemed normal until I found a large collection of candid photos and videos taken by her about 4 months ago. They weren't meant for me, and she had deleted them from her phone but forgot to delete them from the backup. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to continue searching by opening the video camera on her phone and scrolling through the discovered content. Before talking to her, I chose to rewrite this material in case she remembered and erased it. I kept this information for several days, trying to handle it with understanding and considering possible explanations for its presence. At that time, OnlyFans wasn't popular, so I initially thought she might post explicit materials online, but that would be out of character for her. I emphasized that she's always been reserved. I couldn't imagine how this could be explained other than a romantic relationship with someone else. Again, I expressed my suspicions to her, mentioning something was off but refrained from revealing the facts I discovered, hoping for an explanation that would dispel my doubts. In response, she seemed slightly offended, reminding us that we already discussed this issue and denying any relationship with another man. There was no admission of guilt. I asked her again if she needed to share something or speak out, and again she refused. Before this conversation, I got access to her Google account again, so I presented her with all the information I gathered and demanded an explanation about the contents of her Google account. Her initial reaction was surprised, but she quickly composed herself. She accused me of ruining an unexpected anniversary gift she had planned for me. Knowing that we both travel a lot, she wanted to give me something interesting for our time apart, but I remained skeptical and decided to play a bluff. I told her I had access not only to her Google account, hoping this would make her confess the truth. On my ultimatum to leave if she didn't, she couldn't, hold back her tears and insisted everything was not as it seemed, apologizing and asking for forgiveness. She claimed she did nothing wrong but only acted stupidly. When I asked about the person, she mentioned she called him her colleague. They first met at a work event at the end of 2016, about 7 months before this important event. Interestingly, he holds a similar position in another branch of the same company, located about 200 miles away from us. Initially, they communicated by email mainly about work. After exchanging numbers, she emphasized that given his extensive experience in this position, her only intention was to get professional advice and share tips. It was her recent promotion to a similar position that triggered more personal topics in their conversation, and he began to flirt, to which she willingly reciprocated. Realizing the need for privacy, he suggested moving their communication to an encrypted messaging app. From my perspective, this man seemed to have a tendency to pursue married women, which was unpleasant to me. The initial messages were deleted, so I never saw them, but the rest of their conversation was saved in the messaging app they used. When I said I wanted to watch, she resisted and tried to talk me out of it emotionally. At the same time, I reminded her that I was ready to leave if she wasn't, completely honest with me. Eventually, she reluctantly opened the app and handed it to me, curling up with her head in her lap. The content of the messages was explicit, filled with provocative photos and videos. Both participants were excited about an upcoming summer work event where they planned to spend 2 nights in a hotel, detailing shockingly graphic messages about what they intended to do. Continuing to read, my thoughts went back to the earlier video. I asked if she had sent him the video, and in response, she burst into tears. Trying to gather more information, I scrolled through the conversation until I found a video. To my horror, they were exchanging numerous notes discussing him. He expressed pleasure from indulging in pleasure while watching the video, and she replied that it turns her on. This revelation deeply offended me. It wasn't just about sharing an intimate video, but also emotional betrayal. Participating in such a vulnerable action was completely unfamiliar to me. Let me clarify that I, never shared explicit photos, let alone sent them. The idea of sharing such an intimate picture, especially with someone she was involved with, terrified me. However, they managed to involve me in their past relationships, even though I never willingly participated. Maybe not intentionally, but it seems so now. Thinking about it, I realized with deep regret that I was just her replacement and an equal participant in that video. I realized that all those worries and experiences I expected were directed solely for his benefit, not mine. So I made the difficult decision to leave and informed her about my desire to divorce. Despite her moving out, she insisted on reconciling. To get a grip on the situation, I consulted with several divorce lawyers who informed me that a settlement agreement would inevitably lead to a significant decrease in my financial well-being and joint custody of our child. After carefully studying my financial capabilities and having numerous conversations with my parents, I came to this conclusion. Turning to my colleague for advice and trusting my friends, I concluded that divorce is the most appropriate option. I believe that I could overcome financial difficulties reasonably soon, allowing me to retire as planned. Additionally, I believe that my daughter's well-being would be better if she had contented parents, even if they were no longer married. When I finally reached out to my wife to tell her about my decision to start divorce proceedings, she surprised me by offering a deal. She suggested a year-long trial separation, during which we would have time to cool down and restore the relationship. After seeking advice from a marriage counselor, I reconsidered the situation. If I chose to move on, the consultant would be ready to facilitate the divorce process, providing equal custody of the child and a more favorable distribution of property. After careful consideration, I agreed to this decision. I made it clear to my wife that I intended to approach our separation as if I were single. Given the length of our relationship and my limited experience when we first started dating, I felt that I needed to gain more life experience to make an informed decision about our future. I expressed my dissatisfaction with her behavior and made it clear that if she considered it unfair or felt uncomfortable in such an unequal position, then we could think about divorce. Although it was unpleasant for her, she understood my point of view and eventually agreed. Soon after, I started dating other women, including a romantic relationship with a woman I met at the gym that lasted several months. It seems that my wife doubted the sincerity of our relationship. She didn't handle the situation properly. During our first marriage consultation, we introduced ourselves and discussed our circumstances. The marriage counselor asked about my dating status, to which I replied affirmatively. In response, my wife made the following remark: I see the point in us going through this if you re-dating other women. After the session, I agreed with her opinion and expressed the belief that marriage counseling might not be a useful idea. She subsequently apologized and retracted her words. I told her we could revisit the idea later. Over the next few months, she periodically, often late at night, sent me messages asking why I had treated her this way and whether I had not punished her properly. After about a year and a half, I began to consider the possibility of reconciliation. We successfully engaged in CO, parenting, and spent time with our daughter as one family. Besides, the dates were incredibly dull. Perhaps it was premature, but disappointment overwhelmed me. After numerous dates and even second and third dates, I realized that I couldn't imagine anything more than casual relationships with the women I dated. As a result, having been divorced for more than a year, I decided to end my dating. This choice allowed me to spend more time reconnecting with my wife. In early 2019, I asked her to move in with us to rebuild our family, bringing great joy to my daughter. Our relationship restoration centered around our shared commitment to raising our child. As a mother, I trust her implicitly. She is excellent, and I have full confidence in her ability to make sensible financial and medical decisions on my behalf if needed. However, our romantic love hasn't rekindled, and unfortunately, I no longer feel a deep sense of gratitude for having her in my life. While some aspects of our relationship aren't ideal, it doesn't diminish my overall happiness. I've held on to hope for a long time, but it's been over 4 years since our reconciliation, and it seems things won't get much better. Nevertheless, I am content fulfilling the roles of a responsible partner and devoted father daily. This used to suit me well, but recent events brought discord into our relationship, leaving me feeling depressed and lost. After the betrayal, I am really counting on the support of others. My best friend and I have been inseparable since our teenage years, attending all significant events together, from proms to weddings, and even the birth of our children. Despite the busy life, we managed to find time for joint sports several times a week. During the tough times of separation from my wife, he provided support, checking on me daily and ensuring I took care of myself. He even monitored my drinking intake. I tried not to succumb to excessive drinking and to keep my composure until I regained stability in my life. But after I took over the organization of Thanksgiving last year, the situation began to change. He became distant, often canceled our classes at the gym, and generally avoided communication. At first, I attributed this behavior to being busy during the holiday season, given the family and work responsibilities that usually consume all of us at this time. From time to time, I contacted him by SMS to find out how he was doing, but his answers usually came down to short messages or a simple thumbs up emoji. I didn't attach much importance to this. Perhaps he just needed personal space. I tried to communicate with him and convince him of my sincere care and support, but in January, my wife confronted me with the fact that I had not informed her about the divorce of my closest friend and his wife. I was completely unaware of the situation she was talking about. As it turned out, my friend's wife turned to my wife with a request to help her overcome infidelity and convince her of the need to work on their marriage. In response, my wife just offered her typical advice. She stressed the importance of qualities such as transparency, patience, and respect, and even advised her to read something. But I was struck by her reaction to someone else's situation. Despite the obvious irony in her answer, I refrained from expressing my thoughts. It was very sad for me to watch the pain they caused. Like everyone else, I knew about the difficulties they faced and could not understand why they did not turn to me for support. After all, this man gave me incredible support during my wife's infidelity, and I thought he should have known that I would never condemn him. Driven by my anxiety, I started reaching out to him, inviting him to the gym or for a drink, hoping to find solace. We were engaged, for example, in a game of disc golf, but it took a long time to persuade him. When we met, his attitude toward me was far from warm. He seemed curt and unfriendly, but as we talked, he gradually began to tell his story. He said that at some point his wife told him that they should live separately, as I did. She even suggested that extramarital affairs are common in many marriages. His wife's disbelief in his fidelity led to the fact that he began to think about divorce. It was obvious that he partially blamed me for the current situation. The pain inflicted on me was as sharp as a blade. The mere thought that I had played some role, even the most insignificant, in the cruel fate of my friend's betrayal caused almost as much pain as the discovery of my wife's infidelity did. My decision to stay with my wife somehow affects this outcome. Does forgiving infidelity mean that it becomes more tolerable? Is there anything I can do to help my friend? I tried to explain why I decided to stay, emphasizing that our relationship had become purely practical. Our marriage no longer resembled what it was before. However, his indifference didn't confuse me. I believe he has every right to be angry, and I sympathize with him. The recent incident reopened old emotional wounds, significantly worsening my relationship with my wife. It's been 2 months since our last intimate moment, and even making eye contact or engaging in physical touch has become challenging for me. The thought of divorce has started crossing my mind again. But fortunately, my daughter is grown up now and can handle the potential consequences. I think she reached an age where she can express her wishes and opinions about our family situation. I have complete confidence in my wife's ability to be a great CO, parent, irrespective of our relationship status. I feel a strong sense of guilt and depression about how much we've regressed, and I'm somewhat disgusted by my own actions. Have any of you ever felt this overwhelming sense of guilt, especially at such an advanced stage? How did you cope with it? Logically, I understand I am not to blame, but his criticism puts a lot of pressure on my conscience. I can support him the way he once supported me. I am genuinely at a loss about what to do. Any advice or words of support would be greatly appreciated. I can help but wonder if cheating has permanently damaged the part of me seeking connection and closeness. After our conversation, I felt emptiness and the absence of any real essence. I remember lying in bed one weekend, contemplating the lack of emotions I should be feeling. Despite being with an amazing woman and experiencing a tender and charming moment, an inexplicable emptiness prevailed within me. I longed for the deep connection and closeness my wife and I once had, but it never surfaced. This inability to feel burdened me with guilt and deep self-doubt. When my wife and I reconciled, I hoped to regain the deep satisfaction and connection we once shared. Despite the physical aspect being enjoyable, there's no true satisfaction in it. It feels like I am just going through the motions and not experiencing a genuine connection with my wife. Since I last expressed my concerns, there has been some improvement in our relationship. We've had several conversations, and I must commend my wife for her insight and intelligence in understanding what was bothering me. I questioned why she felt entitled to condemn my friend's wife for behaving similarly to herself. She adamantly denied the similarity, claiming Mike's wife had repeatedly cheated while she had never done so. It was clear she had convinced herself she never intended to cheat with a third person. I reminded her of our previous conversations, to which she replied something like this: I made a big mistake and allowed myself to get carried away by the moment, even though I had no intention of doing anything. She just doesn't get it, or maybe I don't understand it. On one hand, I recognize our situation could have been worse, but on the other, the guilt still weighs on me. At least we're communicating now. Some people suggested psychotherapy, but we never went to marriage counseling after the first session. However, my wife attended individual therapy sessions during our separation. My family has faced challenges with mental health treatment, and my grandmother's mistreatment by mental health professionals during a less understanding era left a lasting impact on our perception. This has become a significant obstacle for me in seeking help for myself, and I am unsure how to overcome it. Regarding Mike, I decided to give him the space, as you all recommended. I reached out to him through text, expressing my support, apologizing for his current difficulties, and assuring him of my presence and support. In response, he gave me a thumbs up, indicating he needed my help. I can help but feel sorry for him and would like to offer support. I am grateful to all of you for being an umbrella for me, because I can share these things with anyone in my life. They either condemn me or condemn my wife, which isn't good for anyone. I would greatly appreciate any advice or words of support. On another note, tonight was an unexpected development. For the first time since the new year and the incident with Mike and his wife, after finishing work she drank several glasses of wine. From the start, she exuded undeniable beauty that has always captivated me. Lately, my desire for physical release has been increasing rapidly, complicating matters. Her infidelity revealed that I am not an integral part of her past life. Perhaps I am just a preference, not an absolute necessity, meaning if I can satisfy her desires, someone else undoubtedly will. There was no tenderness or closeness in this meeting, just dark, desperate, and even primal energy. As soon as she reached the end, the immediate desire was to take a shower, which I did. Unfortunately, her feelings were hurt, and they would have been hurt even more if I had rejected her. I am not sure this outcome can be considered a victory for me. I apologize for clouding the mood, but I am deeply disappointed in myself and our situation now. Sharing my thoughts here brings me some comfort. Growing up, my father instilled in me that a man should silently cope with his problems and fulfill his duties, as no one cares about our emotional well-being. We are valued only for our usefulness. Perhaps it's not surprising he passed away at such a young age. After the incident I described, an awkward tension lingered in our family. To avoid this discomfort, I intentionally kept my presence to a minimum, thanks to my daily routine, including work and gym classes. Additionally, my daughter and I found solace in our shared passion for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, spending a significant amount of time together in the gym, where events were held every evening on weekdays and Sunday afternoons. In early February, news of my mother's sister's passing reached us. She lived in a neighboring state and left behind cherished family photos, looms, and personal belongings important to my mother. Without hesitation, I offered to make the trip to pick up these valuable items. The agreement was made about 3 weeks ago, and my wife and I were planning to make the trip together last weekend. On Friday, as we were getting ready for work, I reminded her of our plans for the Sunday trip and volunteered to go alone, despite the long journey of over 4 hours each way. Even though I assured her I could handle it, I brought up my past experience with such a trip. She expressed a desire to go, but I convinced her everything was fine and suggested she probably had more interesting ways to spend Sunday. Yet she insisted on accompanying me and said she didn't mind coming along. I stressed that I wanted her to join me, but emphasized it was ultimately her decision whether to stay home or join the trip. In response, I made it clear I wanted her to come with me. I didn't want her to go, not because I didn't want her to, but because I understood it would be an unpleasant experience for her. So on Sunday morning, I woke up early, ensuring my mother could take care of our daughter for the whole day. Once everything was settled, I returned home for my wife, ready to hit the road. The first hour of the ride passed in silence, as she had just woken up and liked to talk in the morning. Eventually, we stopped for breakfast, refreshed ourselves with some coffee, and began a conversation, mostly about our daughter and work. Then the conversation took an unexpected turn. It was casual, consisting of small talk and nothing extraordinary. Suddenly, she inquired about Mike's well-being. Not being aware of his current situation, I admitted my ignorance, which puzzled her given our close friendship. I explained that I hadn't met with him since our last get-together for drinks a few months ago. Perplexed, she asked if there was any specific incident causing our separation. I clarified that it was simply both of us being busy with our lives, making communication difficult. Despite my efforts to shift the conversation, she refused to back down. She started criticizing me, stating that I didn't support a friend and expressing disappointment about my absence during his tough times. She insisted that his difficulties stemmed from his wife's infidelity and the upcoming divorce. Though I sensed tension rising, I managed to contain it. Instead, I calmly told her I no longer wanted to continue the conversation and drowned out her words by playing my music podcast. Deep down, I knew this conversation was unavoidable and had to happen. I've always been better at expressing my thoughts in writing than speaking off the cuff. To prepare for this conversation, I actively participated in online discussions, which proved helpful. Additionally, I maintain a diary where I jot down questions I need answers to and articulate my thoughts for the audience. Despite my stubbornness, the invaluable advice I've received from everyone here has genuinely influenced me. Without hesitation, I decided to lower the stereo system's volume. I shared my meeting with Mike, explaining that his wife, like mine, encouraged him to live separately. I emphasized that infidelity unfortunately had become common in marriage, leading him to think his reaction was exaggerated. I conveyed that there was some truth in his wife's viewpoint, suggesting that staying with a cheater unwittingly normalizes betrayal. Furthermore, I opined that it would be crucial for his wife to witness the consequences my wife faced after losing her marriage. Perhaps she wouldn't have taken the actions she did. I also mentioned that Mike's divorce in our conversation brought back painful memories, making me reflect on her infidelity and our marriage. She reacted with anger and defensiveness, criticizing Mike and objecting again to me calling her relationship with a colleague treason. Trying to avoid a difficult discussion, I advised her to disregard this issue, expressing regret for bringing it up and suggesting we focus on the beauty of trees and flowers. In response, I turned on the radio again, and we endured about 30 minutes of awkward silence. Eventually, she seemed to calm down, apologized, and expressed a desire to talk. Reluctantly, I agreed, allowing her to continue the conversation. Her first question was whether I still loved her, and I honestly admitted that I was not sure. She claimed to know about my feelings for her. Curious, I asked how she could be sure when I couldn't figure it out myself. She said that love is an action, not just a feeling. She feels my love, because I am devoted to our family. I am a devoted father, faithfully fulfilling my duties every day, even receiving her during our separation. Even in the toughest times, she trusted me infinitely. When she needed me, she knew she could rely on me without hesitation. Being next to me, she felt confident for herself and our daughter. She believed that all my actions stemmed from love, and if she felt I loved her, she considered it genuine affection. She asked if I believed she loved me, and I confidently replied that I knew what she loved. I admitted that her life would probably be easier if she decided to leave, and love would be the driving force behind her decision. I wondered why she chose to stay despite putting our family at risk during the betrayal. I couldn't understand how she could claim to love me and still behave that way. I expressed my doubts, suggesting that something might be lacking in me, making her seek connections with another person. I was puzzled why she never raised these issues with me, stressing that she should have ended the relationship, not changed. This upset her, and she emphatically stated that leaving had not even been considered by her. She loved me very much, but I couldn't grasp how consistent and logical her words were. I wondered why she would enter a relationship with another man if she wasn't dissatisfied. I questioned if I hadn't given her enough attention to make her feel wanted and loved. Though she assured me I did nothing wrong, she admitted that, in our long-term relationship, she began taking these aspects for granted. In this situation, I might have done these actions for her out of a sense of duty or obligation. She also expressed uncertainty about our relationship, mentioning that she always noticed attention from other women. It made her feel inferior, as if she didn't have a special place in my life. She believed that, without her presence, I would have had many alternatives. This fact attracted her to a partner much older than us, short and bald with a big belly, completely opposite to me in appearance. She mentioned seeing photos of his wife, an average middle-aged woman, normal but not particularly attractive compared to her. My wife, younger and more attractive, felt she had a special place in his heart thanks to his undivided attention. She felt incredibly confident and valuable. She found great pleasure in the intense, almost obsessive desire he felt for her. She understood she was the only one causing such strong emotions in him. It had an intoxicating effect on her, almost like a potent substance. My curiosity got the best of me, and I asked if she had any suspicions about my loyalty. Surprisingly, she firmly denied any concerns, trusting my loyalty and devotion, believing I wouldn't betray her. However, when I dated other women during our breakup, her perception drastically changed, leading to a violent reaction. I questioned why I wasn't deserving of the same loyalty. She insisted she was loyal and devoted, stressing she would never change. But I reminded her of messages planning a physical relationship during a company event. To my surprise, she dismissed it, claiming it was to boost his ego and that the company wouldn't send her this year. She did it to support his faith and ensure a constant flow of attention. Curious, I asked if she was attracted to him. She grinned and denied it. Expressing my confusion, I explained her statement seemed contradictory. In response, she compared her SMS relationship to a man's use of explicit content to boost energy levels. There's enthusiasm and anticipation around her and his partner, indicating a strong bond, but it doesn't mean a lack of love. This contrasts with someone discussing their love partner, feeling cheerful and inspired by attention. As a result, her connection with me became even more pleasant. This made me reflect on how intense our relationship was before the day she talked about her feelings with great enthusiasm. According to her, this connection played a crucial role in boosting her self-esteem. She made it clear that her relationship with him had nothing to do with these feelings. It became obvious that these were the very problems she diligently addressed in therapy. However, I've never turned to a therapist because it's always been a difficult topic for me. Mental health problems were common in my father's family, who suffered from serious illnesses. Despite his condition, he managed to function well most of the time, experiencing occasional bouts of delirium. In contrast, his mother's condition was much more severe, leading to repeated placements in psychiatric clinics. Witnessing how his mother was subjected to extremely cruel and inadequate care, my father developed a distrust of mental health professionals. As a child of a father who feared doctors and hospitals, I also developed a deep-rooted distrust of mental health professionals. The constant worry that my father would be suddenly separated from his family during bouts of illness filled me with anxiety. Fortunately, I managed to avoid the same problems that my father and grandmother had, having passed the age when symptoms usually appear. I became more inclined to ignore emerging signs. I decided to abandon the idea of marriage counseling after one meeting with 2 psychotherapists left me extremely uncomfortable. Now, I don't know how to overcome the emotional burden I carry. Perhaps therapy could be beneficial, but I'm afraid my spouse can only share what's beneficial to her. It's a dilemma. When we arrived at our destination, we started packing my aunt's belongings. Spending time with my uncle has become a routine, but there's always a strange feeling when sorting out someone's things after their passing. The first time I felt this was when my father passed away. It struck me that all their possessions remained, but they were no longer there. Their whole life fit into objects, many of which might seem insignificant to us but were important to them. Unfortunately, we'll never grasp the reasons for their attachments. In a somber atmosphere, we returned home, reflecting on the challenging process of sorting out my aunt's things. Going over our detailed conversation, feeling its weight, exhausted by the long day, we delved into our relationship and contemplated seeking marriage counseling. Despite my doubts, I promised her to seriously consider this idea. I'm unsure how to interpret the details of her affair and the person involved. Should I trust her story, and even if I do, Will it bring me any comfort or upset me more? I'm not sure yet. Our conversation went deeper than before, and driving played a role, allowing us to open up without looking into each other's eyes. It was almost like being in a confession booth. Opening up about some problems seems more pleasant. Maybe this will help us move forward, whether it strengthens the marriage or leads to a breakup. Nevertheless, it's progress, and I find encouragement in the fact that we both persevered through the discomfort. I managed not to withdraw, a positive step. She overcame her defensive attitude, which had hindered our conversations in the past. I may have contributed to her tendency to downplay some issues. I'm not saying her act wasn't serious, it does jeopardize the relationship. However, in my view, Mike's wife's infidelity was much more severe. She had an affair with a mutual friend, they spent time with a friend, her husband also considered close. Throughout the story, it was clear she repeatedly had an affair with her partner, even within their shared home and bed. Reflecting on it, I admitted that if my wife had shown even a fraction of such disrespect, I would have ended the relationship quickly. I firmly believe that if she had taken their relationship beyond the virtual space, I would have left without hesitation. This part of the conversation troubled me, but I commend my wife's courage for reporting the affair to HR, given the company policy against fraternization. I also informed the other person's spouse that I would take action if she didn't, stressing the importance of proper behavior. To delay the divorce process, I'm not sure how much credit is due to her, but the unfaithful wife eventually quit her job after the situation became public. Otherwise, she might have faced dismissal, though it's doubtful considering her experience and professional mentor role. However, this would have caused complications and led to his dismissal. Apparently, the betrayed spouse also decided to divorce him. My wife and I are working on preserving our family, gradually rebuilding our faithful and spiritual connections.
Story 2.
My husband let me open our marriage, then disappeared after I did, leaving me with nothing. My name is Emma, and the love of my life is Oliver. We've been friends for nearly 7 years and in love for over 4. Oliver is my dream partner, kind, attractive, and financially stable, with a good income from his job. He's been a dedicated worker since the age of 15 and has no regrets about it. He's a real man who enjoys working hard to provide for a family. He grew up by the sea, whereas I come from the capital city. We got married 2 years after meeting, just 1 month after experiencing our first love at the age of 19. My parents were supportive, but his family initially wasn't thrilled about our arrangement. They accused me of trapping him into marriage, even though I was a virgin and had no children. It's hard to understand how they could see it as trapping. I've also been working diligently, starting at a hotel reception when I was 17. On the other hand, Oliver had a previous relationship, maybe 2, but he only admits to 1. It's a mystery why they blamed me for anything. Despite the initial blame and some early animosity, they eventually embraced me as family, and we all found happiness in each other's company and trust. Oliver and I have been in love and married for almost 4 years, and we are all very content. I take care of the cooking and cleaning for him, and am eager to fulfill any of his desires. In our intimate moments, I never refuse, and we both find immense happiness in each other. He is my ultimate desire in every way, and I wouldn't ask for anything more. Now this is where complications enter the picture. I've been working alongside a man named Doran at the hotel since the very beginning. Doran, who is 32, handles maintenance and janitorial tasks for the hotel. Let me make this crystal clear right now. For everyone out there, I have absolutely no romantic desires or attraction towards Doran. Doran is simply a kind-hearted person who has gone through a difficult time. He has a wife who cheated on him and left, taking his son with her. Through a paternity blood test, it was revealed that the son is not biologically his, exposing the affair and implicating another man as the father. Doran, who is not just my friend but also beloved by all our colleagues at the hotel, was in deep despair after this heart-wrenching episode. He didn't want to go on with life and even took days off work, something he had never done in his 13 years at the hotel, never missing a single day until this ordeal. I was extremely concerned about my friend and co-worker. To boost his confidence, I began talking to him at work and insisted that we have lunch together every day, along with other CO workers. In the break room or outside at tables to chat in the fresh air and sunlight. Doran feels like he's lost his masculinity because of what his estranged wife did to him. He believes no woman will ever want him again, causing him immense anguish. I told Doran that this isn't true at all. I firmly believe any woman would be fortunate to have him as her partner. He is kind, gentle, a good provider, and a loving father to his son. I'll share more about that part of the story later on. Having conversations with Doran over these weeks gave me an idea. I thought I could help him regain his sense of masculinity and at the same time explore a relationship with a different man. something I had never done before except with my beloved Oliver. This would help me resolve that lingering question in my mind. I then planned when to approach Oliver with my solution and seek his approval. After we finished dinner and cleaned up, I sat down with Oliver for our discussion. I shared my thoughts and suggestions with him. His response was to burst into laughter and give me a crazy, incredulous smile. He thought I was joking about all of this. I assured him that I wasn't joking and explained why I believed this could be an ideal solution for both Doran and me. I emphasized that he had nothing to worry about concerning Doran because I had no desire or attraction for him. Oliver became quite upset and stormed away, slamming the bedroom door. However, he didn't lock the door, and I knew what he wanted. To show my love and commitment, I removed all my clothing and entered the bedroom. He can never resist me, just as I can never resist him, even after 4 long years. I gave him everything he loves, and we fell asleep together in love and happiness, just as we always are. I waited for a day before bringing up my suggestion to Oliver again. I asked him if he had thought about it and whether he'd give his blessing. Once more, he firmly stated that he wouldn't, and warned that if I went through with it, he would file for divorce and have no further communication or friendliness with me. I acknowledged his stance with an okay and sat beside him to watch a movie. Eventually, I offered him a treat and we spent the night together on the couch, still deeply in love with each other. During this time, I observed that Oliver was distant and preoccupied with something other than our intimate moments or the delicious meals I prepared. He frequently talked on the phone outside our apartment or in a hushed tone in the spare room. My suspicions were raised, but there was nothing obvious. Days passed, and it was now Sunday. After attending religious services, Oliver was planning to drive to the sea for a 4-day trip with his family. They had a yearly tradition of fishing during this time, which I had no issue with. I understood that he needed his male bonding time to maintain his masculine qualities and strength. Before he left for his trip, I brought up my suggestion once more. Oliver seemed frustrated but responded, "Emma, you're an adult, and I can't force you on any matter. If you want to be with another man, I can't stop you. I've already expressed my feelings." About this, I hugged, kissed, and thanked him for his understanding, but he looked at me strangely before getting in his car and driving away. Before Oliver left, he advised me to remember what he had told me. I expressed my love for him and continued to send affectionate messages and texts that night. The next day during lunch, I met with Doran and shared my suggestion with him. He was completely surprised and hadn't anticipated this at all. He initially declined, stating that he couldn't engage in a relationship with a married woman. I explained that my husband didn't agree, but allowed it, and this was what I wanted. Doran pondered my suggestion throughout Monday night, unable to sleep. When we met on Tuesday, he agreed to it on the condition that both my husband and I were comfortable with it, emphasizing that there would be no emotional involvement, only the physical act. I assured him that I had no desire for him whatsoever. He was a nice man, but not someone I found attractive in any way. So, on Tuesday night, I went to Doran's place. It was a cozy little home, and we had the encounter using protection, and there was no kissing or intimate gestures, just some physical contact in the act itself. It seemed to satisfy Doran quickly. For me, it was merely about putting an end to my curiosity. It wasn't a memorable experience and held no significance for me other than checking off a box. That evening, I sent a text message to my beloved Oliver, informing him that everything had gone smoothly. I assured him that Doran's self-esteem had been restored, and I had found the answer to my question. I emphasized that I would never be with another man, only him, my love Oliver. It's crucial to understand that this was a purely physical encounter, with the use of protection, devoid of any emotional connection or love, unlike the intimate moments I share with Oliver. Let me clarify this for everyone out there. I chose to text Oliver because I was concerned about his reaction, and he didn't respond that night. I spent a sleepless night filled with worry. Thankfully, the next morning he texted back saying he would be returning home on Saturday instead of Friday. While I didn't like the idea of him being away for 2 additional days, I appreciated his understanding regarding the suggested encounter and was grateful to have his love. The following day, Doran and I had lunch together, and he expressed his gratitude for the session and for helping him regain his confidence and sense of self. He also shared that he had been granted 50% custody of his son through the court despite not being the biological father. I celebrated this news with him and explained that now that our purpose had been fulfilled, we didn't need to continue meeting individually for lunch or other gatherings. He thanked me, understood, and assured me that he wasn't a deceitful person. During this time, I continued to send loving texts and intimate photos of myself to my dear Oliver. However, his boat had poor service, so his responses were infrequent, and he mainly expressed his anticipation of seeing me on Saturday. I was filled with excitement and love, eagerly awaiting his return. But unfortunately, this story takes a painful turn. On Friday, after a long day at work and shopping for Oliver's favorite foods, I returned home to a shocking sight. My apartment was empty and divorce papers were placed on the counter accompanied by a note. The note stated, "I thank you and wish you good luck and success with Doran, signed by my beloved husband Oliver." I was overwhelmed with tears and disbelief, knowing that this decision was not his own, but influenced by his family's disapproval of me. Oliver would never willingly do something like this. He had taken away all the furniture, silverware, cups, glasses, and linens, leaving only a single set. Our king-sized bed was replaced with a small twin bed, seemingly from his nephew's room. He left me with a small TV and a chair. Additionally, he took all the kitchen appliances but left me with just a saucepan and a frying pan. He even provided paper plates, plastic utensils, paper cups, and basic necessities like toilet paper and paper towels. My sole possessions left were my clothing, toiletries, and makeup. I attempted to call Oliver, but I discovered that he had blocked my number. When I reached out to his mom and sister, I found that they had blocked me as well. This was the case with his dad and brother too. It became apparent that Oliver had been consulting with an attorney during those times when he was away or in the spare room. It seemed like he had initiated this process shortly after I shared my suggestion, which felt like a deceitful move. I can't believe what's happening. I then read the letter included in the divorce agreement, which instructed me to direct all correspondence and conversations through the attorney with no direct contact with my husband. This brought me to tears. At the end of the day, I decided to call the attorney to understand what was happening and how I would survive. I explained that I couldn't afford to pay for this apartment on my own. The attorney informed me that Oliver had covered the lease payment, including basic utilities, for the remaining 3 months on our lease. However, I would need to manage expenses for video service, internet, and cell phone on my own. The attorney also mentioned that when the lease expires, Oliver had terminated it. If I wanted to stay, I would need to renew it with the landlord. I'm left wondering how I can manage to stay when I can barely afford it. Is this how a man treats the love of his life and a woman who gave him everything, from love in various forms to cooking, cleaning, and running all errands? Oliver always had to ask, and he would get whatever he wanted. Now I'm on the edge. I couldn't sleep that night, and the following day I decided to visit Oliver at his job site. I was informed that he had taken on a job by the shore and specifically requested to work in that area. He's a skilled concrete worker, one of the best, especially for someone so young. I asked the foreman to let him know I was there and that I loved him, and he said he would pass on the message. I'm overwhelmed with grief. It's truly unbearable, like experiencing a death and loss. I confided in a friend and co-worker about everything, and she couldn't believe my actions. She's the one who initially suggested the idea. When I questioned her about it, she said, "Yes, I mentioned it, but I never thought you'd actually go through with it. It was just crazy girl talk." The following day, I took a bus to the seaport since I don't drive. I went to my in-laws' home, and although I wasn't exactly welcomed, they allowed me inside and prepared a meal and coffee for me. I explained the misunderstanding and how I love Oliver deeply and eternally. They were kind, but Oliver's mother told me that he doesn't want to see me again and suggested it would be best if I never contacted him. I expressed my inability to do that because he is my entire world. Oliver was working 100 kilometers away, and his family didn't welcome me to stay with them, so I had to take the bus back to my empty apartment. I cried the entire journey and continued crying all night. I even had to take some time off from work the next day to collect myself. Now, I need your help with my question. How can I regain my husband's love and mend this misunderstanding? Please, I'm not looking for judgment or criticism, as I've already received plenty of that in a previous post without any helpful suggestions or actions. All I'm seeking are practical steps to win back my man, the love of my life, because I can't continue like this. Your assistance is greatly appreciated. Update 1. Let me address some questions from this group. Yes, I believe in God and the sanctity of marriage. Do you? No, I was not unfaithful to my loving husband, and I would never engage in such behavior. It's quite audacious to even suggest that. Yes, I do consider myself a good girl. How many 24-year-old women do you know who have only been with one man and had just one other latex session? I can answer that for you, none, unless they're nuns. No, I have no intention of having any kind of relationship with Doran beyond being co-workers. There's no attraction or desire there. What I did for him came from the kindness of my heart. I take pride in helping him, and it's ultimately up to God to judge me, not any of you. No, I will never be with another man in the future. Perhaps you should ask these questions to your own significant other. Why not? Because you don't want to hear the truth? No, I didn't diminish or disrespect Oliver. You haven't met my husband, so you can't judge his masculinity. I know he's more of a man than anyone here. No, I haven't disclosed the situation to my parents or other family members. But I'm confident they would be proud of their daughter for doing what's right and selflessly helping people. No, I have no interest in engaging in latex sessions with any other individuals in this group. Many of you seem to have bitter attitudes. Update 2, well, I have to provide another update, and it's quite an unfortunate situation. It's been a whole month since I've been without my husband, and I feel utterly empty and heartbroken. I've made every effort to contact him, but there's been no response. I've even resorted to calling him from other people's phones and leaving heartfelt messages. But it seems he's screening his calls and has never returned any of them, despite my pouring my heart out to him. I went as far as having Doran call Oliver and leave him a message expressing gratitude for his act of kindness and how it saved Doran from a life of misery. Doran told Oliver that he sees him as a great man and will forever be indebted to him for his actions, emphasizing that there's no love or interest between me and Emma, we're just colleagues. However, Oliver hasn't responded to any of this. I decided to confide in my parents and brother about my divorce, but their reaction was far from what I anticipated. They're very angry with me and can't see the good deed I did, only focusing on the perceived infidelity. No matter how much I try to convince them that it wasn't cheating but a selfless act, they remain unconvinced and express disgust towards me. They've even suggested I go to confession every day for the next year. I believe that in the end, it's up to God to judge me, not the people on this earth, including my own family. Final update. Okay, I wasn't planning on returning to this troublesome post, but some kind-hearted people have asked for an update, so here it is. I really wish I could block all those bitter individuals in the comments. Anyway, let me fill you in on my current situation. I'm now living at our community hostel because my lease expired, and I don't have the financial means to afford rent in the capital city. It's a decent place, but it's only a temporary solution. I could have stayed with my parents, but I chose not to since they don't understand my perspective. Now about the divorce, it's official. It might just be the quickest divorce in our country's history, which seems to be my luck, but at least I have faith in God to support me. The judge appeared to be quite traditional and didn't seem to have much regard for women in today's world. He viewed my suggestion as nothing more than cheating and disregarded the fact that I had helped Doran regain his life. He simply stated, "You can call it whatever you want, but it's cheating and a breach of your marriage." I tried to explain that my husband had given me permission, but when he asked my husband and his attorney, they both denied it, saying, "No, Your Honor, he did not." What Oliver told Emma was, "You're a grown woman, and I can't prevent you from doing anything." He then added that he had previously warned Emma that he would divorce her if she went through with it. The judge turned to me and I conferred with my legal representative who confirmed, yes, Oliver did tell Emma this, and it's a truthful statement. The judge proceeded to ask, "So why did you proceed with your affair knowing this?" My legal representative and I were caught off guard and didn't respond. The judge then said that we didn't have to answer the question because it was irrelevant to the outcome. He then granted Oliver the divorce, officially ending the marriage. As part of the ruling, he awarded me the equivalent of €6,000, about $7,000, which Oliver was required to pay within 90 days. Can you believe all of this? Just €6,000 for 4 years of various forms of intimacy, cooking, cleaning, running errands, and taking care of this man when he was ill? If I had worked these jobs instead, it would have amounted to over €200,000. Do I believe I should have received €200,000 from Oliver? No, I do not. However, receiving only €6,000? Come on, people. Why aren't women valued more for their valuable contributions to marriage? Can the individuals in the comments section answer me that question? This is my last post here because I won't continue arguing with the unkind individuals in the comments section. I'm simply drained, and you all are unpleasant people. Instead, I'm going to invest all my time and energy into winning Oliver back over the next year. I left him a message on his phone, letting him know I won't go on any dates for at least a year, maybe even indefinitely, as I'll be patiently waiting for him to return. I told him he's welcome to come to my new apartment any time for any type of affection and provided him with my new address. I believe that one day, I'll hear a knock on my door, and there will be my dreamboat, Oliver, standing there, ready to embrace me with kisses. We'll then live our lives happily ever after, possibly with many children and daily affection. Merry Christmas to everyone out there, and I extend God's best wishes to all, even those who dislike me and themselves. Alright, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned, and let's dive in. This incident occurred more than 5 years ago, and I still haven't completely healed emotionally. Back then John, was 31 years old, and my girlfriend Lisa was 29. We had been in a loving, monogamous relationship for 3 years, or at least I thought so. We crossed paths at a cocktail reception held at a local art museum. Ironically, neither of us was a fan of modern art, but we were both there with friends, and we hit it off right away. We started dating casually and soon decided to exclusively commit to each other because our connection was undeniable. Around a year into our relationship, Lisa brought up the idea of moving in together, as she was eager to take our relationship to the next level. I initially hesitated, expressing that I wasn't quite ready for that step, so we continued to live separately but spent at least 6 nights a week together. And our love for each other continued to deepen. Over the following year, Lisa continued to gently nudge me towards taking that next step. Eventually, on our 2nd anniversary, I reluctantly agreed, and we moved in together. Everything seemed to be going wonderfully, and despite being together for over 2 years by that point, our intimacy in the bedroom was still vibrant and adventurous. With our relationship going smoothly, Lisa began dropping hints about marriage and starting a family. I let her know that I could envision that future with her, but wanted us to use this time living together to evaluate if we were truly ready to take that next step. Around 3 months into our cohabitation, I received quite a shock. Lisa called me at work to tell me that she had missed her period and might be pregnant. This caught me by surprise since she had been on birth control pills. She assured me that she hadn't missed a single dose, so I attributed it to the small chance of contraceptive failure, which is around 9%. After ending the call with Lisa, I went through a whirlwind of emotions, ranging from fear to excitement. However, the more I thought about it, the more joy I felt about the idea of becoming a father. Driving home that night, I was overjoyed, and upon arriving home, I embraced and kissed Lisa, expressing my excitement, which made her equally happy. As the weeks passed, Lisa started inquiring about our marriage plans. I told her that I wasn't ready for that at the moment, but suggested we consider it after the baby's arrival. She understood but continued to bring up the topic several times a week, emphasizing how much she wanted to be my wife and spend her life with me. Over the next few months, we dedicated our time to preparing for our child, transforming our spare bedroom into a top-notch nursery. I spared no expense on the furniture and fixtures, ensuring we were fully prepared for our impending arrival. Our lives were going so smoothly that during Lisa's 7th month of pregnancy, I took the opportunity to propose with a heartfelt proposal. I got down on one knee and Lisa joyfully exclaimed, "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you, John." We were both overjoyed. I suggested we have a civil ceremony at the mayor's office the following month, followed by a reception after the baby's birth, and she enthusiastically agreed. We had a wedding date set, but just a few days before the ceremony, our baby had different plans, and Lisa went into labor. We rushed to the hospital at 4 a.m., and by 9 a.m., Lisa had given birth to a healthy baby boy. I was by Lisa's side in the delivery room, assisting with the birth. Although the delivery went relatively smoothly, I couldn't help but notice immediately that the baby didn't resemble me. He had jet black hair, a deep brown complexion, and appeared to be of Hispanic descent. Both Lisa and I, along with our extended families, have Northern European backgrounds with light hair and fair skin tones. No one in either of our families has Hispanic heritage. When the baby was placed into Lisa's arms, I glanced at her face, and despite her efforts to appear composed, I could sense her shock at the baby's appearance. My heart was racing, but I managed to maintain my composure, pretending that everything was normal. Lisa wanted me to hold the baby, which I did, and tears welled up in my eyes. I cradled the infant and felt an overwhelming sadness, knowing he wasn't biologically mine. Despite my emotions, I handed him back to Lisa and mentioned that I was going out to inform our parents of the exciting news. I went out to the waiting room and shared the news with them. They all went inside to see Lisa and the baby, while I explained that I needed a short walk to calm my nerves after all the excitement. I headed over to a small park area by a stream that flowed through the hospital grounds, and there I completely broke down in tears. My world felt like it had crumbled around me. I knew that today I would lose both my future wife and the baby I had so dearly hoped for. I spent about 30 minutes crying my heart out, and then my phone rang. It was my mother. She inquired about my well-being, and I replied, "I think so." She then said, "Son, I understand why you left." I confided, "Mom, the baby isn't mine." Her response was comforting, "Son, I know, and I'll stand by you no matter what decision you make." With that assurance, I regained my composure, went to the restroom to freshen up, and returned to the room. Upon re-entering the room, only Lisa, her parents, and my mom remained. The baby had been taken to the nursery, and Lisa was understandably exhausted from the childbirth. I suggested that we all give Lisa some much-needed time to rest. As we left the room, Lisa asked if I could stay with her, but I gently replied, "Babe, it's best for you to rest without talking." We all headed to the cafeteria and spent a few hours there while Lisa got some rest. Upon returning upstairs, I allowed her parents to check on her first. After spending about half an hour with her, they relayed that Lisa wanted me to be with her, so I went in to comfort her. Lisa began talking, expressing her happiness, and asked if I was happy too. I reassured her that I was thrilled that both she and the baby were healthy. Concerned, she observed, "You seem distant. Is something wrong?" I replied, "We need to talk." She inquired, "Talk about what?" To which I responded, "The baby." Perplexed, she asked, "What about the baby?" That's when I disclosed, "Lisa, the baby is clearly not mine." She reacted defensively, stating, "It is your baby. Who else would it be?" I challenged her, saying, "You tell me." Her response was tearful sobbing, and I allowed her to cry for what felt like an eternity but was actually closer to 10 minutes. After she composed herself, I pressed further, asking about the father of the child. Through her tears, she confessed, "You are the father." I didn't accept that and insisted, "Lisa, please don't lie to me." She fell into a silent daze, staring straight ahead. Eventually, she broke the silence, saying, "I'm so sorry, John. I was unfaithful, but I want you to be the baby's father." I disregarded her plea and repeated my question, "Who is the father?" Reluctantly, she admitted that her ex, who she had been with for over 5 years, had come to town 8 months ago, and they had a brief encounter at our apartment. I stood up and walked over to the window, gazing down at the traffic below. Lisa anxiously asked if our relationship was over. I conveyed that it was, as I couldn't fathom trusting her again. She burst into tears, begging for another chance, but I firmly asserted that it was not possible. I insisted that she needed to inform our parents about this situation immediately. Lisa begged me not to disclose it to them. Firmly, I told her, "Lisa, you must do this now because you won't be returning to our apartment when you and the baby are discharged tomorrow." Tearfully, she pleaded with me again, but I simply repeated, "No," and went outside to fetch our parents. As we entered the room, Lisa's father noticed her tear-stained face and inquired about what was wrong. I asked everyone to take a seat, which they did. Then I instructed Lisa, saying, "Tell them what we just discussed." Overwhelmed with emotion, she burst into tears and couldn't speak. I proceeded to explain the situation to our parents, and all three of them began crying, with Lisa's parents crying uncontrollably. I informed Lisa's parents that when she was discharged the next day, she would be going home with them, and I would arrange to have all her personal belongings and the nursery we had prepared moved to their house. Throughout this conversation, Lisa continued to cry uncontrollably. Then I turned to my mom and said, "Mom, let's go." In response, Lisa screamed, "John, please don't leave me. I love you and I'm so sorry." With that, we walked out the door, leaving her parents to console her. While we were driving away from the hospital, Lisa called and pleaded, "Please, John, don't end our relationship like this." I replied, "Lisa, I didn't end our relationship, you did." I continued, "The trust we had is forever broken, and the person I knew and loved is gone." Despite her continued pleas, I remained silent, eventually telling her that there was nothing more to say before hanging up. The following morning, her father came over with his van, and we loaded all of Lisa's belongings in the nursery into the back. I accompanied him to their house, helped with unloading, and set up the nursery in one of their spare bedrooms. I was devastated. Lisa's mom inquired if there was any possibility I would reconsider and give her daughter another chance. Politely, I explained that it was not possible because I could never trust Lisa again, and I would never be able to love the child that was conceived by another man. With this, her father drove me back home, where I spent the next day crying my eyes out. Over the course of the next week, Lisa reached out to me relentlessly, making over 100 calls and sending numerous texts. She professed her love and asked for another chance. Initially, she understood my reluctance to marry her and become a father to her child. Instead, she suggested that we continue dating as we were before. I chose not to respond, and eventually, the messages ceased. Undoubtedly, this has been the most challenging period of my life. Although I have no intention of being a part of Lisa or her son's life, I do entertain the thought of meeting him for a beer when he turns 21. I'd like to express my gratitude for his early arrival, which prevented me from marrying his mother and further complicating my life. My parting advice to all men out there is to consider obtaining a pre-birth paternity test with every pregnancy. It can save you a lot of wasted time and heartache in the long run.
Story 3.
Tom Anderson stood in the elegant bathroom of Le Petit Jardin, his fingers working methodically at his burgundy tie. The silk felt smooth against his calloused hands that had built their first home's deck, hands that had carried Emma across countless thresholds, hands that now clenched involuntarily as he checked his watch for the 10th time in as many minutes. 7:15 p.m. 45 minutes late, the restaurant's ornate lighting cast unforgiving shadows across his face, highlighting the web of fine lines that had appeared over 7 years of marriage. He leaned closer to the mirror, studying the subtle changes in his reflection. At 35, he wasn't old, but the weight of his marriage had aged him beyond his years. The constant stress of walking on eggshells, of maintaining the facade of a perfect husband, had left its mark. His phone buzzed against the marble countertop, the sound echoing off the bathroom's tiled walls. Another message from Emma. Traffic. Be there soon. Don't make a scene. Tom's jaw tightened as he read the words. The same excuse, the same commanding tone, the same underlying threat. He could picture her perfectly not stuck in traffic, but somewhere else entirely, taking her time to ensure her entrance would be perfectly timed for maximum impact. The marble felt cool beneath his palms as he braced himself against the counter, forcing slow, measured breaths. In the mirror, he watched his expression smooth out, practiced neutrality, replacing the momentary flash of anger. Emma had taught him this, unknowingly, how to wear a mask, how to hide one's true feelings beneath a careful veneer of calm. The door swung open, and Richard from Emma's office stepped in, his designer suit a sharp contrast to his uncomfortable expression. Tom, the natives are getting restless out there. Any word from Emma? Tom straightened, adjusting his cuffs with deliberate precision. She's on her way. Traffic, apparently. Richard's laugh held a note of disbelief. Right? Traffic. Well, Janet's suggesting we order appetizers. You might want to come manage the situation before she takes charge of your anniversary dinner. Heaven forbid, Tom replied, his voice dry. He followed Richard out of the bathroom, moving through the restaurant's main dining room. The space buzzed with the gentle murmur of conversation and the soft clink of fine china, couples and families enjoying their meals without the weight of pretense that awaited him in the private dining room. That Le Petit Jardin had been Emma's choice, of course. She dismissed his suggestion of celebrating at the intimate Italian restaurant where they'd had their first date. That little place? Darling, we need something more sophisticated for our 7th anniversary. Besides, everyone expects us to do it properly. Everyone. Always everyone. Emma's constant audience. The people she collected like precious gems to reflect her own brilliance. The private dining room door loomed ahead. Solid oak with antique brass fixtures. Tom paused, squaring his shoulders before pushing it open. 20 pairs of eyes turned to him immediately, expressions ranging from sympathy to barely concealed impatience. The room itself was a testament to Emma's taste and her spending habits. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the hand-painted wallpaper, their light catching on the crystal stemware that lined the long mahogany table. Fresh flowers, roses, and lilies. Emma's favorites filled silver vases at precise intervals. The bill for tonight would be astronomical, but Emma had insisted on sparing no expense. We have an image to maintain, darling. Janet, perched at the near end of the table in a dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary, lifted her empty champagne flute meaningfully. Tom, please tell me Emma's almost here. This celebration is feeling decidedly uncelebratory. She's on her way. Tom repeated the familiar lie, taking his seat at the head of the table. The empty chair beside him seemed to mock him, its vacancy a physical representation of the holes in his marriage. Traffic is heavy tonight? Traffic, Janet echoed, exchanging a knowing look with Maria, another of Emma's inner circle. Well, I suppose we should expect nothing less. Emma does love to make an entrance. The murmur of agreement that rippled around the table made Tom's skin crawl. These people, these supposed friends, had watched his marriage deteriorate for years, had witnessed Emma's subtle cruelty, and had said nothing. Some, he suspected, even admired her for it. Remember last year's Christmas party? Michael, a partner at Emma's firm, chuckled from his seat. She was 2 hours late, but showed up looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Classic Emma. She had a client emergency. Tom found himself saying, the words bitter on his tongue. Another lie he'd defended, another excuse he'd helped maintain. These things happen in her line of work. Of course they do. Janet smiled, her red lips curving like a wound. Emma's always been so dedicated to her work. You're lucky to have such an ambitious wife, Tom. The word lucky hung in the air like poison. How many times had Emma used that same word? You're lucky I married you, Tom. You're lucky I put up with your boring job. You're lucky I'm patient with your... inadequacies? The waiter appeared at Tom's elbow, his presence a welcome interruption. Sir, would you like me to open the champagne? It's been chilling for quite some time. Tom glanced at the bottles of Dom Perignon nestled in their silver ice buckets. Emma had insisted on them, scoffing at his suggestion of the boutique champagne they'd shared at their wedding. That was fine for starting out, darling, but we've moved up in the world. Well, some of us have. Not yet, Tom told the waiter. Let's wait a few more minutes. Janet sighed dramatically. Tom, darling, you're being ridiculous. Emma would want us to start celebrating. It's what she always says the party starts with or without her. Before Tom could respond, his phone buzzed again. The message was shorter this time, 5 minutes. Getting out of the car now. He pocketed the phone, noting how his hands wanted to shake. Not from anxiety, not anymore. Now it was something else, something darker that he kept carefully contained. Let them think he was the patient, passive husband. Let them believe his silence was weakness. The minutes crawled by, filled with increasingly pointed comments about the time and thinly veiled criticisms of his insistence on waiting. Tom sat through it all, his expression pleasant and unchanging. He'd learned from the best, after all. Emma had taught him everything he needed to know about wearing masks, about hiding one's true intentions behind a smile. At precisely 7:30 p.m., the door to the private dining room swung open. Emma had arrived. The room fell silent as Emma appeared in the doorway, and Tom had to admit she knew how to make an entrance. Her crimson dress caught the light like liquid fire, the designer silk clinging to every curve she'd spent countless hours perfecting at the gym. Her blonde hair cascaded over one shoulder in artfully tousled waves, and her makeup was flawless, freshly applied. He noted, not the face of someone who'd been frustrated in traffic. I'm so sorry, everyone. Her voice filled the room like music, hitting that perfect note between apologetic and charming. She moved with practiced grace, her Louboutin heels clicking against the hardwood floor in a steady rhythm. The traffic was absolutely horrible. I hope you haven't been waiting too long. The room erupted in greetings and compliments, their earlier irritation forgotten in the wake of her charisma. Emma worked the room like a conductor leading an orchestra, each interaction perfectly timed and pitched. A light touch on Michael's shoulder as she complimented his new watch. A conspiratorial whisper in Maria's ear that made her laugh. A warm embrace for Janet that lasted just long enough to demonstrate their closeness. Tom remained seated, watching the performance he'd seen countless times before. Emma saved him for last, she always did. It was part of her carefully choreographed routine, a way to emphasize the distance between them even as she played the role of devoted wife. Darling, she purred, finally making her way to his chair. She bent down, brushing her lips against his cheek. The scent of her Chanel perfume wasn't quite strong enough to mask another fragrance, a masculine cologne that made Tom's nostrils flare. I'm so sorry I'm late. You know how these things go. Tom met her eyes, keeping his voice low enough that only she could hear. Yes, I do know exactly how these things go. Something flickered in Emma's eyes, a momentary crack in her perfect facade. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her practiced smile. She took her seat beside him, immediately turning to Janet. Darling, is that the new Valentino? The cut is absolutely divine on you. The waiter materialized beside them, sensing the shift in the room's energy. Shall we begin with some fresh champagne? Oh, yes. Emma clapped her hands together like an excited child, though Tom could see the slight tremor in her fingers. We must celebrate properly. 7 years of marriage deserves the best champagne, doesn't it, Tom? Of course, Tom replied, watching as she reached for her water glass. Her hand shook almost imperceptibly as she brought it to her lips, leaving a perfect crescent of red lipstick on the rim. Nothing but the best for you, Emma. That's always been the case, hasn't it? She shot him a sharp look over the rim of her glass, her eyes narrowing slightly. Tom, darling, you're being awfully quiet tonight. Usually you're falling over yourself to tell everyone about our first date. The table laughed on cue, and Tom felt the familiar sting of her words. This was Emma's favorite tactic, making him seem desperate and clingy while casting herself as the patient, indulgent wife. The perfect couple narrative, carefully curated to hide the rot beneath. Why don't you tell it, Emma? He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. You always did have a way with stories. Emma's eyes flashed with something like triumph as she launched into the tale. Well, if you insist. Tom had made reservations at this quaint little Italian place, sweet, really, but hardly suitable for a first impression. Thank goodness I suggested that new French bistro instead. You should have seen him trying to pronounce the menu items. More laughter from their audience, and Emma warmed to her performance. But he was so eager to please. Ordered the most expensive wine on the menu, tried to impress me with his knowledge of French cuisine, which, as you can imagine, was rather limited. The wine was your suggestion. As I recall, Tom interjected mildly. Just like you suggested, I cancel my business trip the following weekend to accompany you to the Hamptons. Emma's smile tightened fractionally. Tom has such an interesting way of remembering things, always focusing on the smallest details. The champagne arrived, providing a welcome interruption. Tom watched as the waiter filled each glass, noting how Emma's eyes kept darting to her phone. She placed it face down beside her plate, but it buzzed quietly every few minutes. Expecting an important call? He asked, his voice pitched for her ears alone. Just checking the time, she replied smoothly, though her fingers twitched toward the phone. Unlike some people, I have a busy schedule to maintain. I'm sure Jake keeps you very busy. Emma's hand jerked, sending her fork clattering against her plate. The sharp sound drew several curious glances, but she recovered quickly, letting out a melodious laugh. Oh, you know me. Always clumsy after a few glasses of champagne. The conversation around them resumed, but Tom could feel the tension radiating from his wife. She'd shifted slightly away from him, her posture rigid beneath its elegant facade. Her next words came through barely moving lips, her smile never wavering. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Emma. Just making conversation about your busy schedule. She turned to Janet, her voice deliberately bright. Did I tell you about the new client we landed last week? Massive cosmetics company, very hush-hush at the moment, but it's going to be huge. Tom listened as she spun her tale, noting how she glossed over the late nights and weekend meetings that had accompanied the new account. He wondered if Jake was part of the project team, or if that was just a convenient cover for their rendezvous. The evening progressed with the arrival of appetizers, delicate portions of foie gras, and truffle-infused escargot that Emma had selected. She barely touched her food, Tom noticed, though she made a show of appreciating each dish. Remember when Tom tried to cook me dinner for our first anniversary? She laughed, touching Janet's arm conspiratorially. The poor dear nearly burned down our kitchen. Thank goodness for takeout, right? The table chuckled obligingly, and Tom took another sip of his whiskey. The memory surfaced unbidden, how he'd spent hours preparing her favorite meal, how she called last minute to say she was working late, how the food had gone cold as he waited. The kitchen fire she spoke of had happened months later, when she'd left a pot on the stove while taking a work call in their bedroom. And now here we are, 7 years later, Emma continued, raising her glass in a toast. Tom may not be the best cook, but he makes up for it in other ways. Don't you, darling? The checkbook, you mean? Tom's voice cut through the laughter, sharp and clear. Emma's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered. Tom has always been so good with numbers. It's why we work so well together. He handles the boring stuff, and I make sure we have fun. Right, honey? The arrival of their main courses provided a momentary respite from the tension. Tom watched as Emma picked at her salmon, her fork moving food around the plate without really eating. Her eyes kept straying to her phone, which buzzed with increasing frequency as the evening wore on. As the dinner plates were cleared and the staff began preparing for dessert, Emma stood with practiced elegance, smoothing the lines of her dress. I think it's time for our anniversary dance, don't you, Tom? We can't break tradition. The other guests murmured in approval, some already reaching for their phones to capture the moment. Tom rose from his chair, offering his hand as expected. He'd played this role for 7 years, the devoted husband, the patient partner, the willing participant in Emma's carefully crafted narrative. The staff quickly cleared a space in the center of the room as soft music began to play. Tom recognized the song immediately, their wedding dance music, because Emma never missed an opportunity for symbolism. She moved into his arms with practiced ease, but he could feel the stiffness in her shoulders, the slight resistance in her frame. Everyone's watching, she whispered, her smile fixed in place. Try to look happy, darling. Tom pulled her closer, one hand resting possessively on the small of her back. The fabric of her dress was cool under his palm, but her skin burned hot beneath it. She was nervous. He could feel it in the tension of her muscles, see it in the slight strain around her eyes. They swayed to the music, maintaining their public image of the perfect couple. Emma's perfume surrounded him, but underneath it was another scent, masculine, familiar from the countless times he'd noticed it on her clothes, her skin. The same cologne that had lingered on her gym towel, her car seats, the shoulders of her blouses. Tom pulled her closer, his lips brushing against her ear. You reek of Jake. No matter how hard you tried, you couldn't completely wash his scent off you. Emma missed a step, her fingers digging into his shoulder. For a moment, her perfect mask slipped, revealing a flash of genuine fear. She recovered quickly, forcing a laugh that drew curious glances from their audience. You're being ridiculous, Tom. Is this really the time for your paranoid accusations? Just an observation, he replied, maintaining their dance with fluid grace. Like how you're never home on Tuesday nights? Or how your gym sessions always run long when Jake's car is in the parking lot? You're imagining things, she hissed through her smile, though her hand trembled slightly against his shoulder. This is exactly why I need to spend time away from you. You're suffocating me with your neediness. The song reached its final notes, and Emma pulled away with practiced poise, her public smile firmly in place. Thank you for the dance, darling. Now, who's ready for dessert? Their guests applauded, and Emma took a theatrical bow before returning to her seat. Tom remained on the dance floor for a moment longer, watching as she immediately turned to Janet, already spinning their dance into another story that would make him look foolish. He returned to his seat just as the waiters brought out a massive chocolate cake, 7 candles flickering on top. Emma gasped in delight, playing up her surprise though she'd been the one to order it. Oh, Tom, you shouldn't have. I didn't, he replied quietly. You ordered it yourself last week. Remember? Emma's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Always so literal, aren't you? Can't you just play along for once? The cake was cut and distributed, and Emma made a show of feeding Tom the first bite. Her eyes were hard despite her playful gesture, and she pressed the fork against his lips with more force than necessary. Tom noticed the red lipstick stain she'd left on the fork, the same shade he'd found on Jake's collar in their gym's parking lot last week. Perfect, just like our marriage, she announced to their guests, who raised their glasses in another toast. As the evening began to wind down, guests started making their excuses and departing in pairs. Emma worked the room one final time, dispensing hugs and air kisses, making plans for lunch dates and shopping trips she might or might not keep. Tom stood by the door, shaking hands and accepting congratulations that felt like ashes in his mouth. Finally, only Janet remained, gathering her designer purse. Dinner was lovely, she said, her eyes darting between Tom and Emma. 7 years, that's quite an achievement. Yes, Tom agreed, helping her with her coat. Quite an achievement indeed. Emma linked her arm through Janet's. Let me walk you to your car, darling. I need to powder my nose anyway. Tom watched them leave, noting how Emma's phone was already in her hand, screen tilted away from his view. He settled the bill, adding it to the mental ledger he'd been keeping. Every charge, every withdrawal, every transfer, all carefully documented for when the time came. When Emma returned 20 minutes later, her lipstick was freshly applied, and her phone disappeared quickly into her purse. Ready to go home, darling? I'm absolutely exhausted. Long day? Tom asked, holding her coat with exaggerated courtesy. You have no idea. She slipped her arms into the sleeves, checking her reflection in a nearby mirror. The traffic really was terrible. I'm sure it was, Tom replied, opening the door for her. Almost as terrible as lying to your husband on your anniversary. Emma froze for a moment before continuing through the door. I don't know what's gotten into you tonight, Tom, but I don't appreciate these accusations. You're embarrassing yourself. They walked to their separate cars in silence. Emma had insisted on driving herself, claiming she had early meetings the next day. Another lie to add to the growing pile. Happy anniversary, Emma, Tom called as she reached her car. She turned, her smile cold in the parking lot's harsh lighting. Go home, Tom. Take a sleeping pill. You're clearly not yourself tonight. Tom watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the night. He got into his own car, but didn't start it immediately. Instead, he pulled out his phone and opened his banking app, checking the latest transactions. A small smile played at his lips as he reviewed the numbers. Emma thought she had him figured out, the quiet, patient husband who would accept anything to keep the peace. She saw his silence as weakness, his patience as submission. She had no idea that every mock, every lie, every betrayal was another nail in the coffin of their marriage. Let her think she was in control. Let her believe her charm and manipulation still worked. Tom had learned from the best, after all, and soon, very soon, Emma would learn that sometimes the quiet ones were the most dangerous. The engine purred to life, and Tom pulled out of the parking lot, heading in the opposite direction from their home. He had preparations to make, and Emma's arrogance would give him all the time he needed. The morning after their anniversary dinner, Tom sat in his home office, methodically reviewing financial statements. The early sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting thin lines across his desk as he typed numbers into a spreadsheet. Each entry represented another piece of evidence, another step in his carefully orchestrated plan. The sound of Emma's heels clicking against the hardwood floors echoed through the house. She appeared in his doorway, already dressed for work in a fitted navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. "I'm having lunch with Janet today," she announced, adjusting her diamond earrings. "Don't wait up tonight. I have a late meeting with a new cosmetics client." Tom didn't look up from his computer. "With Jake?" Emma's fingers stilled on her earring. "What is wrong with you lately?" "Jake is a colleague, nothing more." "Your paranoia is becoming tedious." "Interesting choice of words," Tom replied, finally meeting her gaze. "Considering Jake's wife called me yesterday." The color drained from Emma's face, but she recovered quickly. "And what exactly did that unstable woman have to say?" "Nothing concrete. Just concerns about late-night texts and suspicious charges on their credit card." Tom leaned back in his chair. "At that new French hotel downtown, the one you recommended for our clients last month?" Emma's laugh was sharp, defensive. "That woman has always been jealous of successful people. She probably saw a business dinner charge and let her imagination run wild." She strode into the office, planting her hands on his desk. "I won't have you questioning my professional relationships based on the ravings of a bitter housewife." "Professional relationships?" Tom echoed, his voice flat. "Like the one you had with David from accounting last year? Or Michael from legal the year before that?" "You're being ridiculous." Emma straightened, smoothing her skirt. "I have meetings to attend. Real work to do, unlike some people who sit around making up conspiracies." "By all means," Tom gestured to the door. "Don't let me keep you from your meetings." Emma turned on her heel, but paused at the doorway. "I put up with a lot from you, Tom. Your boring job, your lack of ambition, your constant need for validation. Don't push me on this." "Wouldn't dream of it," Tom replied, turning back to his computer. "Have fun at lunch with Janet. Give Jake my regards when you see him later." The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Tom waited until he heard her car pull out of the driveway before reaching for his phone. He dialed a number he'd memorized weeks ago. "Mr. Harrison?" "Tom Anderson." "Yes. I'd like to proceed with those property transfers we discussed." He paused, listening. "No, Emma won't be joining us. As her pattern of financial irresponsibility demonstrates, it's best if I handle these matters personally." After ending the call, Tom opened his desk drawer and removed a thick manila envelope. Inside were copies of text messages, credit card statements, and hotel receipts, all meticulously organized and dated. Emma thought she was being careful, but she'd grown sloppy in her arrogance. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Saw Emma having coffee with Jake at Riverside Cafe. Thought you should know." Tom smiled slightly as he typed his response. "Thanks for keeping me informed. Everything's proceeding as planned." Richard had been surprisingly eager to help once Tom had shown him evidence of Emma's affair with his wife last spring. Amazing how quickly loyalty shifted when personal interests were at stake. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of phone calls and emails. Tom coordinated with his lawyer, arranged meetings with financial advisors, and began the process of transferring their assets. Emma had always dismissed his boring job in financial planning, Never realizing how valuable those skills would prove, at 18 noon, his phone rang again. The caller ID showed Janet's name. Tom. Janet's voice was pitched higher than usual. I just had the most interesting lunch with Emma. She seems concerned about your behavior lately. Does she now? Tom kept his voice neutral. And what behavior would that be? She says you've been making accusations, acting paranoid. She's worried about your mental state. Janet paused for effect. She mentioned you've been tracking her movements, checking her phone. Tom allowed himself a small laugh. And you're calling to what? Janet? Check on my mental health? Or report back to Emma? I'm calling as a friend, Janet protested. We've known each other for years. I care about both of you. Like you cared when you covered for her affair with David? Or was it Michael you helped her hide? Tom's voice remained calm, but Janet's sharp intake of breath told him the barbs had landed. Your loyalty to Emma is admirable, Janet. But you might want to ask yourself why she really needs you to make this call. I don't know what you're talking about. Emma would never save it. Tom cut her off. Tell Emma whatever you want about this conversation. It doesn't matter anymore. He ended the call and checked his watch. Emma would be fuming by now, realizing her attempt to gaslight him through Janet had failed. Her next move would be to try to reassert control, probably by demanding they meet for dinner to discuss their issues. Right on cue, his phone buzzed with a text from Emma. We need to talk. Dinner tonight. La Maison. 7 p.m. Tom typed his response carefully. Can't tonight. Taking a long drive. Need to clear my head. Emma's reply was immediate. This isn't a request, Tom. We're having dinner? No, he wrote back. We're not. He turned off his phone and picked up his briefcase. It was time to meet with his lawyer again. Emma's determination to maintain control would make her predictable, and predictability was exactly what he needed right now. The law office of Harrison and Associates occupied the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise. Tom sat across from Peter Harrison, watching as the lawyer reviewed the latest documentation. Everything appears to be in order, Peter said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. The house sale will close next week. Have you arranged for alternate accommodations? Already taken care of? Tom handed over another folder. I've leased an apartment in Mount Ridge under my company's name. Emma won't be able to trace it. Peter's eyebrows rose as he scanned the new documents. She's going to be furious when she realizes what you've done with the assets. She's going to be furious regardless. Tom's voice was steady. Better to control the explosion than let her light the fuse. The intercom buzzed, and Peter's secretary's voice filled the room. Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Anderson is here. She's quite insistent about seeing her husband. Tom checked his watch right on schedule. Emma's predictability was becoming almost comical. Send her in, Tom said before Peter could respond. It's time she understood how things are going to work. The office door flew open, and Emma stormed in, her heels stabbing the carpet with each step. Her face was flushed with anger beneath her perfect makeup. What the hell do you think you're doing? She demanded, ignoring Peter completely. I've been calling you all day. Tom remained seated, his posture relaxed. Having a meeting with my lawyer. As you can see, your lawyer? Emma's laugh was brittle. Since when do you make legal decisions without consulting me? Probably around the same time you started making personal decisions without consulting me. Tom nodded to Peter. Would you give us a moment? The lawyer gathered his papers and quietly left the room. Emma waited until the door closed before rounding on Tom. If you think you can intimidate me with these childish games, sit down, Emma. Tom's voice cut through her tirade. Unless you prefer to have this conversation standing. Something in his tone made her pause. She sank into the chair Peter had vacated, though her spine remained rigid with anger. What is this about? She demanded. And don't give me more paranoid accusations about Jake. This isn't about Jake, Tom replied, though I'm sure he'll be interested to know you've been seeing Michael on the side as well. Emma's face whitened. What are you talking about? The text messages weren't as deleted as you thought. Tom pulled out his phone, scrolling through screenshots. You really should be more careful with your passwords. Or at least use different ones for your various accounts. You went through my phone? Emma's voice rose. How dare you invade my privacy? Privacy. Tom laughed, the sound devoid of humor. Like the privacy you invaded When you emptied our savings account last year? Or when you took out a credit card in my name? That was for emergencies. Emergency shopping sprees at Gucci? Emergency weekends at luxury hotels? Tom leaned forward. Emergency gifts for your various boyfriends? Emma's composure cracked. You're twisting everything. I work hard for this family. You deserve exactly what's coming to you. Tom slid a document across the desk. Our house has been sold. What? Emma snatched up the paper, her hands shaking. You can't sell our house without my consent. Actually, I can. You signed over your rights last month, remember? When you were too busy texting Jake during our meeting with the financial advisor to read what you were signing. Emma's face cycled through shock, rage, and fear. I'll fight this. I'll get a lawyer. With what money? Tom's voice remained calm. Your credit cards have been canceled. The joint accounts are empty. And those expensive gifts you bought with company funds? The audit trail leads directly to you. You wouldn't dare expose me like that, Emma hissed. You'll ruin both of us. No, Emma. Just you. Tom stood straightening his jacket. Your personal accounts should keep you comfortable for a while. Assuming you've been honest about your savings. Emma surged to her feet, her designer purse falling forgotten to the floor. You can't do this to me. I made you. You were nothing before me, a boring accountant with no ambition. I gave you class, connections, a life worth living, and I'm giving you exactly what you deserve. Tom moved to the door. Consider it my final gift to you. The courts won't let you get away with this, Emma snarled. I'll tell them everything how you stalked me, threatened me, manipulated me. You mean like these recordings? Tom held up his phone. Every conversation, every threat, every admission of your affairs, all documented. Would you like to hear some highlights? Emma's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. For the first time in their marriage, she seemed completely at a loss for words. Your things will be moved to storage by the end of the week, Tom continued. The access code will be sent to your office. Don't try to enter the house. I've already changed the security system. Where am I supposed to go? Emma's voice cracked, her armor finally showing real cracks. That's not my concern anymore. Tom opened the door. Though I hear Jake has a lovely guest room. When his wife's not home, of course. He left her standing in the lawyer's office, her perfect world crumbling around her. In the elevator, Tom finally allowed himself a small smile. Emma had taught him well about manipulation, about patience, about wearing masks. Now she would learn just how good a student he'd been. His phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Emma just called. She's hysterical. What should I do? Nothing, Tom typed back. That's exactly what she did for you when she ruined your marriage last year. Remember? The elevator reached the ground floor, and Tom stepped out into the afternoon sunlight. He had more meetings to attend, more pieces to move into place. Emma would try to fight back. Her pride wouldn't allow anything else. But for the first time in their marriage, he was the one in control, and he was just getting started. The next morning, Tom arrived early at his office to find Emma waiting in the lobby. She wore yesterday's suit, her usual polished appearance showing signs of strain. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, despite her attempts to conceal them with makeup. Your secretary wouldn't let me up, she said, falling in a step beside him as he walked to the elevator. Since when do I need an appointment to see my husband? Since you became a hostile party in pending legal proceedings. Tom pressed the elevator button, keeping his eyes forward. Any communication should go through our lawyers. Our lawyers? Emma's laugh held an edge of desperation. Listen to yourself. We don't need lawyers. We need to talk about this like rational adults. The elevator arrived, empty. Tom stepped inside, and Emma followed before he could stop her. You want to talk now? He pressed the button for his floor. After 7 years of talking down to me? Of treating me like your personal ATM? That's not fair. Emma's voice rose. I helped build your image, your social connections. You were nothing before me, and you'll be nothing after me. Tom's calm words hit harder than any shout. That's what really terrifies you, isn't it? Not losing me, losing your lifestyle. The elevator stopped at his floor. Tom stepped out, but Emma grabbed his arm. I made a mistake, okay? Her voice cracked. Is that what you want to hear? I made mistakes, but we can work through this. Tom looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Like you worked through things with David? Or Michael? Or Jake? They meant nothing. Emma's fingers dug into his sleeve. It was stupid. I was bored. You were always so focused on work, on being responsible. Remove your hand, Tom said quietly, or I'll call security. Emma snatched her hand back as if burned. You wouldn't dare make a scene? Try me? Tom straightened his jacket. The time for scenes is over, Emma. Now it's just business. He walked away, leaving her in the elevator. His secretary, Maria, looked up as he approached her desk. Mrs. Anderson isn't to be allowed up without an appointment, he reminded her. And if she makes one, notify security. Already done, sir. Maria handed him a stack of messages. Also, Mr. Stevens called. He says Emma tried to access your joint investment account this morning. As expected, Tom took the messages. Any other attempts? She called the real estate agent about the house sale. In the country club, apparently, she tried to charge a rather expensive lunch to your membership yesterday. Tom smiled slightly. How did that work out for her? Not well, from what I heard. Maria lowered her voice. She made quite a scene when her cards were declined. Inside his office, Tom found 3 voicemails from Janet and 1 from Michael. He deleted them without listening. They'd be the same as always. Emma's flying monkeys trying to make him feel guilty. To draw him back into her web of manipulation, his phone buzzed with a text from Jake. We need to talk. Emma's saying some concerning things. Worried about your wife finding out. Tom typed back. Or your boss? There was a long pause before Jake's response came through. What do you want? Nothing from you, Tom replied. Just stay out of my way. He set his phone aside and opened his laptop. The notification he'd been waiting for appeared in his inbox, confirmation that the house sale had closed early. Emma would be getting the news any minute now, right on cue. His phone exploded with notifications. Calls from Emma, from Janet, from their real estate agent. Text messages flooding in. Tom ignored them all, focusing instead on the next phase of his plan. The intercom buzzed. Sir? Maria's voice was tense. Mrs. Anderson is in the lobby again. She's causing a disturbance. Tom pulled up the security feed on his computer. Emma was at the front desk, her composure completely shattered. Her hair was disheveled, her mascara smeared from tears or rage. Don't let her up, he instructed. If she doesn't leave in 5 minutes, call the police. Already on standby, sir. Tom watched the scene unfold on his monitor. Security approached Emma, who began gesturing wildly, her voice loud enough that the camera picked up fragments of her accusations. Other people in the lobby were staring, phones recording the meltdown of the usually perfectly poised Mrs. Anderson, finally faced with the choice between leaving voluntarily or being escorted out by the police. Emma stormed out of the building. Tom switched off the monitor and returned to his work an hour later. His phone buzzed with a new email. Emma had posted a long, rambling message on social media, accusing him of emotional abuse and financial manipulation. He forwarded it to his lawyer without reading the whole thing. It would just be more ammunition for their eventual court proceedings. His desk phone rang a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Anderson? The voice was professional, clipped. This is Margaret Willis from First National Bank. We've had a situation with Mrs. Anderson attempting to access your private accounts. She's claiming to be an authorized user. She's not, Tom replied smoothly. I trust you followed proper security protocols? Of course, sir. But she became quite insistent. We had to contact security. I understand. Please add a note to all my accounts. Mrs. Anderson is not to be given any information or access, regardless of what documentation she claims to have. Already done, sir. And sir? She mentioned something about a new car she ordered in your name. Tom's smile was cold. Cancel it and flag any other attempts at unauthorized purchases. The rest of the day passed in a blur of similar calls and messages. Emma tried every financial avenue available, only to find each one closed to her. Her desperation grew with each failure, her attempts becoming more erratic. Late that afternoon, Tom's secretary buzzed him again. Sir? A delivery just arrived from La Maison Jewelry. They say Mrs. Anderson ordered it last week. On your account. Perfect timing, Tom murmured. Send it in. The delivery man brought in a sleek black box. Inside would be the diamond necklace Emma had been dropping hints about for months. The one she'd probably planned to wear to her next rendezvous with Jake. "Return it," Tom told the delivery man. "And please inform the store that any future purchases by Mrs. Anderson should be declined." His phone buzzed again. Emma, calling for the 20th time that day. This time he answered. "You bastard," she screamed before he could speak. "You're trying to destroy me." "No, Emma," he replied calmly. "You did that all by yourself." He ended the call and turned back to his computer. There was still work to be done, preparations to make. Emma's desperation would make her dangerous, but it would also make her sloppy, and Tom was counting on exactly that. 3 weeks after their confrontation at his office, Tom stood in his new apartment, adjusting his tie in the mirror. The space was smaller than their former home, but functionally furnished no trace of Emma's expensive tastes or overwrought decorating schemes. The silence felt like freedom. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "She's been calling everyone, trying to get details about tonight's dinner." "Let her," Tom typed back. "Everything's ready." The second anniversary dinner had been his idea, a smaller gathering at Le Petit Jardin, where everything had started to unravel 3 weeks ago. Emma had jumped at the invitation, clearly seeing it as an opportunity to regain control of the narrative. His phone rang. Janet's number flashed on the screen. "Tom." Janet's voice was hesitant when he answered. "Are you sure about tonight?" "Emma's. She's not stable right now." "Worried about your friend?" Tom kept his voice neutral. "Or worried about what she might reveal about your role in her affairs?" "That's not fair." Janet's protest sounded weak even to her. "I never meant to help her deceive me? To cover for her meetings with Jake? Or was it Michael you were running interference for? I thought I was helping a friend." Janet's voice cracked. "She said you were controlling, that she needed space. And now?" Tom interrupted. "What's she saying now?" A pause. "She's saying she can fix everything. That she just needs to talk to you, to make you understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." Tom checked his watch. "Will you be at dinner tonight?" "Yes," Janet whispered. She insisted. "Good. You should be there to see how your help played out." He ended the call before she could respond. The doorbell rang right on schedule. Tom opened it to find Michael standing there, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "She went to my wife," Michael blurted without preamble. "Told her everything about us, about how you drove her to it with your emotional distance. Lucy's threatening divorce. How unfortunate." Tom stepped aside, gesturing for Michael to enter. "Though I suppose turnabout is fair play. You didn't seem concerned about my marriage when you were meeting Emma at the Westbrook Hotel." Michael's face reddened. "That was different," she said. "She said I was boring, controlling, emotionally unavailable." Tom's laugh was cold. "She has a limited playlist, doesn't she? Tell me, did she use the same lines on Jake that she used on you?" "I never meant—" Michael stopped, running a hand through his hair. "What do you want from me, Tom?" "Your presence at dinner tonight." Tom moved to his desk, picking up a manila envelope. "And your signature on these documents." Michael took the envelope with shaking hands. "What is this?" "A sworn statement detailing your affair with Emma, including dates, locations, and her misuse of company funds to facilitate your meetings." Tom's voice was businesslike. "Sign it, come to dinner, and I'll keep the hotel receipt she charged to your corporate card from reaching the board of directors." "You're blackmailing me?" "No, Michael. I'm offering you a choice." Tom checked his watch again. "You have 3 minutes to decide." Michael stared at the envelope for a long moment before grabbing a pen from Tom's desk. His signature was shaky, but legible on every page. "Lucy doesn't need to know about the corporate card," he said quietly. "That depends entirely on your performance tonight." Tom took the signed documents and locked them in his desk. 7 o'clock. "Don't be late." After Michael left, Tom made one final call. "Everything's set at the restaurant," the manager confirmed. "Private room, just as you requested." "And the special arrangements?" "All taken care of." Tom smiled slightly. "Just make sure the cameras are running. We wouldn't want to miss a moment of this special evening." He ended the call and stood at his window, watching the city lights come on as dusk settled. Emma would be preparing for tonight, certain she could charm her way back into control. She'd wear something stunning, arrive fashionably late, and play the role of the wronged wife seeking reconciliation. Let her come with her manipulations and lies. Tom was ready. More than ready, he was eager to show her exactly how well she'd taught him about control, about patience, about revenge. Served with a perfect smile, his phone buzzed one final time, a text from Emma herself. "Looking forward to tonight, darling. We have so much to discuss." Tom didn't bother responding. They did have much to discuss, but not in any way Emma was expecting. Tonight would be their final dance, and this time he would be leading. Le Petit Jardin's private dining room hummed with nervous energy. Tom stood near the window, watching as guests arrived in pairs, their forced smiles and awkward greetings betraying the tension in the air. Janet sat rigid in her chair, picking at her manicure. Michael kept checking his phone, his face pale under the crystal chandeliers. Richard hung back near the bar, avoiding eye contact with everyone. "She's here," the maitre d' announced from the doorway. Tom turned as Emma made her entrance. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, her blonde hair swept up elegantly. But Tom noticed the slight tremor in her hands, the tightness around her eyes that her perfect makeup couldn't quite conceal. "Darling," she purred, moving toward him with practiced grace. "You look wonderful. Save the performance, Emma." Tom's voice was quiet enough that only she could hear. "You're not here to reconcile." Her smile flickered. "Can a wife want to fix her marriage? A wife?" "Yes." Tom gestured to her chair. "A manipulative adulteress trying to salvage her lifestyle? That's a different story." Emma's eyes narrowed, but she took her seat, immediately turning to Janet. "Darling, you look exhausted. Has something been keeping you up at night?" Janet flinched. "I'm fine. Just work stress." Of course, Emma's voice dripped with false sympathy. "It must be so difficult, juggling all those responsibilities." Tom caught the thread in her words. Emma was reminding Janet who knew her secrets, who could destroy her carefully maintained image with a few well-placed revelations. "Speaking of responsibilities," Tom interrupted. "Michael, how's Lucy?" Michael nearly knocked over his water glass. We're working through some things. Aren't we all?" Emma's laugh held a brittle edge. "Marriage is such complex work, isn't it? So many challenges to overcome. Like fidelity?" Tom asked mildly. "Or basic honesty?" The waiter appeared with champagne, providing a momentary reprieve from the mounting tension. Emma reached for her glass with a slightly unsteady hand. "A toast," she declared, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." "To truth," Tom countered, meeting her eyes. In all its uncomfortable glory, Emma's smile tightened. "Tom, darling, perhaps we should focus on moving forward, not dwelling on misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" Richard spoke up for the first time. "Is that what we're calling it now?" "Richard," Emma's voice carried a warning. "This isn't the time." "When is the time?" Richard's laugh was harsh. "When you're done destroying everyone's lives. When you finish playing your little games." "I don't know what Tom's been telling you," Emma began, her tone reasonable. "But he's not been himself lately. The stress of work, perhaps, or finding out his wife has been sleeping with half the company." Richard shot back. The room fell silent. Emma's face flushed red, then pale. "How dare you?" she hissed. "Tom, are you going to let him speak to me this way?" "Why not?" Tom's voice remained calm. "He's only stating facts. Would you prefer we discuss the hotel receipts? The credit card statements? The interesting text you thought you deleted?" "This is ridiculous." Emma stood abruptly. "I won't sit here and be attacked." "Sit down, Emma." Tom's command cut through her protest. "We're just getting started." She sank back into her chair, her composure cracking. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but—" "What I'm doing," Tom interrupted, "is giving you exactly what you deserve. A public performance. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" "All eyes on Emma." He nodded to the waiter, who wheeled in a small television screen. Emma's eyes widened as security footage began to play. She and Jake in the hotel elevator. She and Michael in the restaurant. Countless scenes of her deceptions captured in crisp, undeniable detail. "Turn it off," she demanded, her voice shaking. "This is harassment." "No, Emma. This is consequences." Tom gestured to the screen. "Every meeting, every lie, every manipulation, all documented. Would you like to explain to everyone how you use company funds to finance your affairs? Or should we ask Jake about that?" "Jake has nothing to do with." Emma stopped as the door opened again. Jake's wife Amanda walked in, her expression cold. Actually, he has everything to do with it. Don't you, Emma? Emma's face went ashen. Amanda, I can explain. Like you explained using my husband's corporate card for your little getaways? Amanda's smile was razor sharp. Or like you explained the late-night meetings that never appeared on any official calendar? This is a setup, Emma accused, turning to Tom. You orchestrated all of this to humiliate me. No, Emma. You did this all by yourself. Tom's voice carried throughout the silent room. I just made sure everyone could see the real you. The manipulator. The liar. The fraud. Emma's composure finally shattered completely. You think you can destroy me? She shrieked, rising from her chair. I made you. You were nothing before me. Nothing. And now, Tom replied calmly, you're nothing without me. Emma stood trembling in the center of the room, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The other guests watched in stunned silence as she struggled to regain her composure. You want to talk about fraud? Tom's voice remained steady as he rose from his chair. Let's discuss the company credit cards you maxed out, or the client funds you've been misappropriating. You have no proof. Emma began, but Tom cut her off with a laugh. No proof? I have 7 years of proof. He pulled out a folder and began laying documents on the table. Bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts, even those clever little transfers you thought you'd hidden so well. Janet leaned forward, her face paling as she recognized some of the documents. Emma, you said those charges were approved. They were business expenses. Emma's voice rose hysterically. Everything was for work, for maintaining our image. Like the diamond bracelet you bought Jake? Amanda interjected. Was that a business expense too? Emma spun to face her. You don't understand. Your husband was unhappy. Spare me the justifications. Amanda's voice was ice. The board of directors received copies of everything this morning. Jake's already been asked to resign. You're bluffing, Emma whispered, but her hands were shaking violently now. Tom shook his head. The police have probably arrived at your office by now. Fraud investigation tends to move quickly when the evidence is this clear. My office? Emma's composure cracked completely. What have you done? Nothing you didn't do to yourself. Tom gestured to Michael. Would you like to explain about the falsified expense reports, or should I? Michael stared at his hands. I'm sorry, Emma. I had to come clean. They were going to press charges. You betrayed me? Emma's laugh was borderline hysterical. After everything you what, Emma? Tom's voice cut through her hysteria. After you seduced him? Manipulated him? Used him like you used everyone else? I didn't. Emma tried to grab her purse, but Janet moved it out of reach. Your cards have all been canceled, Tom informed her. Your account's frozen. The house is sold. Your car has been repossessed. Even your office has been cleared out. Emma stumbled slightly, gripping the back of a chair for support. You can't do this to me. Actually, I can't. And I did. Tom moved to stand before her. You taught me well, Emma. About patience. About planning. About waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I'll fight this, she threatened, but her voice wavered. I'll get lawyers. With what money? Richard spoke up. Your personal accounts are empty. Your credit is ruined. Your reputation. He gestured to the other guests, who were all carefully avoiding Emma's gaze. Someone will help me, Emma insisted, looking around desperately. Janet. I can't, Janet whispered. They're investigating everyone who helped cover up your fraud. I could lose everything. Michael. Emma's voice cracked. After everything we shared, my wife knows everything, Emma. Michael wouldn't meet her eyes. I signed a full confession. Emma's legs gave out, and she sank into a chair. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. But it is. Tom's voice was almost gentle. You're finished, Emma. No more manipulations. No more lies. No more using people like toys for your amusement. I loved you, she tried, tears streaming down her face. Everything I did was for us. No, Tom's voice hardened. Everything you did was for yourself. Your greed. Your ego. Your endless need for control. He turned to address the room. I appreciate everyone coming tonight. I know it wasn't easy, but Emma always did insist on having an audience for her performances. It seemed fitting to give her one last show. "You bastard," Emma spat, mascara running down her cheeks. "You planned this whole thing? Like you planned every manipulation? Every affair? Every lie?" Tom smiled coldly. "I learned from the best, remember?" The door opened, and two men in suits entered. "Mrs. Anderson, we're with the fraud division. We need you to come with us." Emma looked wildly around the room, finding no allies among the faces she'd once commanded so easily. "Tom, please." "Goodbye, Emma." Tom straightened his tie. "Consider this my parting gift, the truth you never thought I was strong enough to tell." They all watched as Emma was led away, her designer dress and perfect makeup unable to mask her complete destruction. The room remained silent for a long moment. After she left, Janet broke the silence first. "Tom, I'm so sorry. If I'd known, save it." Tom's voice was firm. "You all saw what she was doing. You helped her do it. Remember that the next time someone asks you to cover up their lies." He gathered his documents, tucking them back into their folder. "The police will probably want to speak with each of you. I suggest being honest." Emma's not the only one who kept records. One by one, the guests filed out, leaving Tom alone in the private dining room. He stood at the window, watching the city lights blur through the glass. 7 years of marriage, of manipulation, of careful planning, all ended in a single evening. His phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. "Police have her in custody." The fraud charges are just the beginning. Tom smiled slightly as he turned off his phone. Emma had always underestimated him, seeing his quiet nature as weakness, his patience as submission. She'd never understood that sometimes the quiet ones were the most dangerous. He left the restaurant, nodding to the manager who had helped set up the evening's surveillance. The night air felt clean, fresh with possibility. Tomorrow, he would start his new life in the quiet town he'd already selected, taking the job he'd lined up weeks ago. No more pretense, no more society parties, no more walking on eggshells. Emma would face the consequences of her actions, her perfect image shattered beyond repair. She'd lost everything: her status, her freedom, her carefully cultivated connections. All because she never realized that the husband she'd dismissed as boring and weak had been watching, learning, and planning. Tom got into his car, adjusting the mirror. His reflection showed no regret, no hesitation. Emma had taught him well about revenge, about patience, about wearing masks. Now she would have the rest of her life to reflect on just how good a student he'd been.
Story 4.
I often wonder if I'm the perfect husband. My job demands a lot from me, and there are times when I come home feeling a bit down. I might not be rolling in cash, but we manage to live comfortably. Our home is nice, we have 2 decent cars, my wife has a wardrobe full of stylish clothes, and our 8-year-old daughter Vanessa has plenty of expensive toys. At the end of the day, I see myself as a simple, hardworking man who deeply loves his family. Gloria and I have enjoyed almost 12 years of marital happiness. However, recently, something seems off between us, a subtle shift that's hard to pinpoint. Gloria has been distant, showing an aloofness I've never seen before. She's been quick to find fault with me over small things, which isn't like her at all. I've tried talking to her about it, asking if something's bothering her that she's not telling me. But like many spouses, she brushes it off, blaming her behavior on tiredness or a tough day. Initially, I gave her space to sort through her troubles, but her detached attitude is starting to grate on my nerves. Besides, any married couple knows that problems with your spouse often spill over into the bedroom. I've always tried to keep our love life exciting and spontaneous. Being a romantic, I used to surprise Gloria with things like bringing home roses after work to set the mood. In the past, these gestures usually led to carnal moments later on. However, lately my efforts seem to be met with just a thank you and a quick kiss. Instead of appreciating them, it's like Gloria sees them as me trying to make up for something. For weeks now, Gloria hasn't shown any interest in closeness, and when I try to initiate, she either isn't in the mood or claims to have a headache. Even when she does agree, she's passive, leaving me to do all the work. As time goes on, I find myself pulling away mentally. I spend time with our daughter when I get home and try to avoid interacting with Gloria as much as possible, which only makes things worse. Feeling desperate, I've spent time at work trying to figure out what might have caused Gloria's behavior, but my introspection hasn't given me any answers. I've replayed countless scenarios in my head, trying to understand why Gloria's acting this way. The more I think about it, the more I can't shake the idea that she might be having an affair. I try to reassure myself that she'd never betray our marriage, but the thought won't go away. So I've started researching signs of infidelity, looking for any changes in behavior or routines. I haven't noticed any significant shifts, but most of my interactions with Gloria are in the evenings. Who knows what she's like during the day? Still, some of the signs of infidelity seem uncomfortably familiar, especially her changed attitude towards me. I've thought about hiring a private investigator, but without concrete evidence, it feels premature and unjustified. All I have are suspicions, not enough to justify the expense of a PI. So, I started investigating on my own, trying small tactics like calling home during the day to check if Gloria was there, but the results were inconsistent. Taking matters into my own hands, I got an old surveillance camera to discreetly set up under the eaves of our garage. I connected it to a hidden tape unit behind some paint cans, hoping to monitor any unfamiliar cars approaching our home. However, after 2 weeks of surveillance, there were no signs of suspicious vehicles. Sometimes I saw Gloria leaving the house, only for her to later say she'd been home all day. However, her absences were brief, seeming too short for anything significant to happen. Unless her potential lover was remarkably fast, these outings might have been just regular errands she didn't think were worth mentioning, hardly proof of an affair. As time went on, my suspicions remained. Despite no solid evidence, Gloria's mood worsened, and our carnal moments became rare, leaving me frustrated. With our 12th anniversary approaching, I saw a chance to inject some excitement into our marriage again. I suggested celebrating with a night out, something we hadn't done in ages. Perhaps dinner and dancing could reignite the spark between us. Eager to reconnect, we arranged for Vanessa to stay at my parents' house for the night, giving us freedom without time constraints. I booked a table at Gloria's favorite restaurant, Plato's Place. As we were seated, I hoped to bring back some of the magic from our earlier years. But Gloria seemed tense for reasons I couldn't figure out. Ordering a bottle of wine seemed to relax her, and our conversation regained its playful tone. After dinner, Gloria was eager to hit the dance floor. Though I suggested trying a new club, she wanted to go to our usual spot, a cozy venue with dim lighting and music for an older crowd. Given the atmosphere and music, it wasn't a hard choice. Dancing had always been something we enjoyed together, drawing us closer in the beginning. Finding a secluded table, we had a few drinks before hitting the dance floor with nostalgic flair. It felt like going back in time, both of us enjoying the moment. After dancing for nearly an hour, we took a break at our table. As I watched Gloria gracefully move across the floor, thoughts of closeness lingered. But my attention shifted when I noticed I wasn't the only one captivated by her presence. Across the room, an incredibly attractive man sat alone at a corner table, his eyes fixed on Gloria's every move. A twinge of concern shot through me as I witnessed what seemed like a brief interaction between them. Did they know each other? As Gloria disappeared into the restroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that the man's gaze lingered on me with a hint of smugness. Although we were in a dance club, I puzzled over why he was there solo, until it occurred to me that, like Gloria, his companion was likely in the restroom. Keeping a close eye on the man while waiting for Gloria's return, I couldn't ignore the unsettling suspicion creeping back in. When Gloria asked for another glass of wine, I hesitated. The idea of her sitting alone while I went to the bar didn't sit well with me. Catching the attention of a bartender, I opted for quicker service. Despite feeling Gloria's disappointment as the server approached, I had a sinking feeling that the evening was about to take a turn for the worse. It was a gut instinct I couldn't shake. Glancing over my shoulder, I saw the same man still seated alone in the corner, confirming my suspicion that he was indeed by himself. "Who's the guy over there?" I asked, catching Gloria off guard momentarily. I thought I detected a hint of panic in her eyes before she swiftly regained her composure. "What guy?" she responded innocently, though her tone betrayed a hint of discomfort. "The guy over there," I persisted. "The one you exchanged glances with on your way to the bathroom?" Gloria quickly denied it. "Honey, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't exchange glances with anyone." Just as our drinks arrived, I noticed Gloria's eyes darting past me. Turning, I saw the man approaching our table, bypassing me entirely as he addressed Gloria with a request to dance. "No thanks," I interjected sharply, my tone revealing my displeasure. His response was mocking. "I was talking to the lady," he retorted with a smirk. "Yeah, well, the lady is my wife, and I decide who she dances with," I snapped back, feeling a surge of indignation. Gloria intervened, attempting to diffuse the tension. "Darren, you're being rude," she admonished gently. "Rude? Do you even know this guy?" I demanded, catching her off guard with a question. "He's the one I was talking about." I don't know what's going on between you two, but it's incredibly disrespectful for him to approach my wife without even acknowledging me, I asserted firmly, turning back to Gloria to continue our conversation. Had he asked if I would mind you two dancing together, I might have considered it, but now, not a chance, I declared firmly, my frustration evident. Darren, you're being silly, Gloria retorted, her tone now edged with impatience. There's nothing going on between this gentleman and me. Yes, we're married, but you don't owe me. I'm not your slave, and if I want to dance with someone, I will. I couldn't believe my wife was speaking to me in such a disrespectful manner. It was a level of disrespect she had never shown before. Though I was seething with anger, I made a conscious effort to control my temper as she continued speaking. Honey, I just want to have some fun, she said, her tone softening. Gloria, it's our anniversary. I want to have fun too, but with you sitting here watching you dance with someone else is not my idea of fun. Especially after I've asked you not to dance with him, I responded, struggling to maintain composure. Now you're right. I don't own you, and I can't stop you from dancing with him. But if you do, then you'd better get him to take you home too, because I'll be gone after 12 years together. I could easily decipher Gloria's emotions from her expression. Despite her outward anger, I was surprised she couldn't detect the same emotions mirrored on my face. Well, it's impolite to keep this gentleman waiting while we argue. I'm going to dance with him and we'll discuss this later, she snapped, her words cutting through the tension. The jackass wore a triumphant smirk as he extended his hand for Gloria to take. She accepted, placing her hand in his as they made their way to the dance floor. I'm certain they didn't notice my departure as I slipped out the door before they even began to dance. By the time my cell phone rang, I was already several blocks away. Where the hell are you? Gloria's voice sounded contrite through the phone. I'm heading home to pack a bag. Why? I responded tersely. There was a moment of silence. What do you mean, pack a bag? Where are you going? She questioned, her tone shifting to confusion. I don't know yet, but I need to get away from you, I stated firmly. I've reached my limit. You can't be serious, Darren. It was just one dance, for heaven's sake. Are you really going to throw away 12 years of marriage over this? She pleaded. It's not just about the dance, Gloria. Why would you stay married to someone you don't love or respect? I haven't caught you in the act, but I strongly suspect you're cheating on me, maybe with the guy you just danced with. I saw how you looked at each other when you went to the bathroom, and when he came to our table, he treated me with the same disrespect a man shows the husband of the woman he's involved with. None at all, I firmly asserted. Darren, her voice softened, I do love you and respect you. I swear there was nothing going on between that guy and me. I would never cheat on you. Why would you even think that? You've got to be kidding me. We haven't been carnal in over 2 weeks. And when we are, you're barely present. You've been irritable and short-tempered for the past 2 months. Don't tell me you respect me because your actions tonight proved otherwise. If you're not having an affair, you're certainly acting like it, I retorted. There was a long pause before she responded. I'm sorry, Darren. I didn't realize. I'm sorry for how I acted. I'm sorry for tonight. I'm sorry I gave you reason to think I'm having an affair. Another brief pause. I guess I did glance at that guy on the way to the restroom. He was attractive. I noticed him while we were dancing too, but I'm not having an affair with him. Please, honey, please just come back and pick me up. We can talk about it. Nope. Like I said, I've had enough. I told you if you danced with that guy, you'd have to find your own way home. And I meant it. I'm pulling into our driveway right now. By the time you get home, I'll be gone. If you're having an affair, maybe you should just go home with your lover boy and forget about me. Honey, please believe me. I'm not having an affair. Look, I'll grab a cab, but please just stay there until I get home, Gloria pleaded, desperation evident in her voice, a stark contrast from earlier. We need to talk this out, please, she begged before abruptly ending the call. Upon arriving home, I swiftly packed a bag and left the house. Within 12 minutes, curiosity nagged at me. Would Gloria really take a cab home, or would the guy drop her off? I drove down the block, switched off my lights, and waited. 15 minutes later, a yellow cab pulled into the driveway. Gloria hurriedly exited and darted into the house. Satisfied with what I saw, I headed for a motel. Almost immediately, my phone began to ring again. I switched it off. Though I lacked concrete evidence of infidelity, my suspicions remained strong. I was nearly convinced that Gloria and the man she danced with knew each other. Perhaps now was the time to hire that private detective. If I wasn't at home, maybe she would seek solace from her lover. The following day, I scoured the yellow pages for the most promising private investigator. After visiting his office and providing a retainer, I headed to work. My secretary, Joan, informed me that Gloria had called 20 times already, and something was amiss. I explained our marital issues and my decision not to return her calls, instructing Joan to relay this message. I also informed the receptionist not to allow Gloria entry to the offices if she showed up. I needed to give the PI a chance to uncover the truth. Now. It was a waiting game. Later that same afternoon, Andrea, our neighbor, called. Despite my reluctance, I answered, expecting the conversation to revolve around Gloria. "Darren," she began, "Gloria told me about the other night. She's been trying hard to apologize, but she says you won't talk to her." "That's true," I responded firmly. "I have nothing to say to her." I heard a sigh on the other end. "She also mentioned you suspect her of cheating on you. Do you really believe that?" "Unfortunately, I do," I admitted. "Her behavior has been strange for over 2 months now. The incident the other night only reinforced my suspicions." "Reinforced?" she questioned. "All she did was dance with a guy." "No, that's not quite accurate. I saw them exchange glances before he came to our table. It was very disrespectful to me, and Gloria chose to support him. Despite my warning her about the consequences, she ignored my feelings. I'm almost certain they're romantically involved." "Darren, really? I think you're jumping to conclusions. I've been your neighbor for years, and if Gloria was cheating on you, I'm pretty sure I would have noticed something. I've never seen any unfamiliar cars parked outside your house, nor have I seen any strange men coming and going. Please, she knows that dancing with that guy was a mistake. She got upset because you told her not to, but she's realized you were right. Trust me, Darren, I know Gloria, and she wouldn't cheat on you." "I'm not so sure anymore, Andrea. Her actions the other night didn't exactly show love." "Please, Darren, just talk to her. You won't solve anything if you don't communicate." I knew Andrea made sense, but I needed time for the private investigator to work. "Andrea, do me a favor. Let her know I'll call her in a couple of weeks. I still need some time to think things over." Another sigh came through the phone. "Okay, Darren. I'll pass on the message, but please promise me you'll call her then." "All right, I promise," I assured her. After saying goodbye, I found myself thinking once more. Andrea and her husband Jack were close friends, and I couldn't imagine Andrea lying to me. If Gloria was indeed being unfaithful, she was doing an excellent job of hiding it. For the following 2 weeks, I experienced overwhelming anxiety. I reached out to the investigator multiple times, but there were no substantial updates. Eventually, he summoned me to his office, and as I took my seat, my stomach twisted with nerves. He pushed a manila envelope towards me, and my hand shook as I lifted it. He suggested I overlook the routine details and directed me to the bottom of page 5. With shaky fingers, I flipped through the report until I reached the designated page. Could this be the evidence I desperately sought? After a thorough investigation, this office found no evidence to support the client's suspicions of infidelity by his spouse. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. Unsure of how to react, I looked back up at the investigator. "Are you sure?" I asked, disbelief evident in my tone. "Mr. Barnes, my team has meticulously monitored your wife's every move over the past 2 weeks. We've observed the house, monitored her communications, and trailed her whenever she left. We've scrutinized her phone records and credit card statements. There's simply no indication of any affair," he affirmed. Relief washed over me, threatening to overwhelm me. I struggled to contain my emotions, resisting the urge to break down into tears of relief right there in his office. "Go home, Mr. Barnes," the investigator advised. "Gently return to your wife and child. In my line of work, happy endings are a rare sight." I thanked the investigator before returning to my hotel room, knowing I needed more time to think. Over the weekend, I pondered everything that had happened. By Monday morning, I felt prepared to make an important call. When Gloria answered, her voice trembled with emotion. "Hello? It's me," I replied. "Are you okay? You sound upset." There was a moment of silence before she spoke again. "Darren, Darren, I'm so sorry. I just don't know what to do if you don't come back to us. I've tried to be strong for Vanessa, but I can't stop crying. I'm sorry. I realize now that I took you for granted. You were right. I should have made it clear to that guy that I was with my husband and not interested. I showed you no respect, and I don't know why. Because I do respect and love you. I promise, Darren, if you give me another chance, I'll never make that mistake again." Her heartfelt plea caught me off guard, a stark contrast to her behavior at the dance club. As I hesitated to respond, she jumped to a conclusion. "You're not coming back, are you?" she asked, her voice filled with despair. "No, Gloria, I am coming back," I reassured her, "but only on a trial basis. I want my wife back, the woman I fell in love with, the woman I married." "She's here, Darren, truly. She's here, waiting for the man she loves," Andrea insisted, her sincerity evident in her voice. "We'll see." Despite everything I've been through, the attitude, the lack of closeness, the disrespect, I'm still not entirely convinced. Not yet. I informed her that I'd be going to the motel after work to gather my things, but I'd be home tonight. There was a moment of silence before Gloria spoke, her voice filled with remorse. "I love you, Darren. I'm deeply sorry for the way I treated you. I don't want to lose you." Despite her words, I couldn't shake off my reservations. I was still upset, and despite the evidence to the contrary, I couldn't shake the feeling that Gloria knew the man from the dance hall. After work, I collected my belongings and returned home. Vanessa greeted me enthusiastically at the door, unaware of our recent troubles. Gloria was there too, wrapping her arms around me and showering me with affectionate kisses. In that moment, as I kissed her back with fervor, I couldn't deny that I still loved my wife. That was 2 years ago, and since then, married life has been nothing short of wonderful. Gloria has once again become the woman I fell in love with, both inside and outside the bedroom. A few months back, she surprised me with a birthday party, a gesture we hadn't done much for my birthday in the past, but became a tradition upon my return. Last night marked our 14th wedding anniversary, and this time Gloria took charge of planning the entire evening. When I arrived home from work, she greeted me with tickets to a dinner playhouse to see Man of La Mancha, one of my favorite plays. After the show, we took a leisurely drive down to the lakefront and strolled along the beach. With the moon casting its gentle glow and warm breezes blowing in from the lake, it felt like a scene out of a romantic movie. "I love you, darling," I whispered, feeling as if we were still in the honeymoon phase of our relationship. "And I love you very much, my dear," replied my adored wife, her eyes sparkling with affection.
Although spring had officially arrived a couple of weeks earlier, according to the calendar, it wasn't until this particular day that Gloria could venture outside without her bulky winter coat. It symbolized the definitive end of yet another harsh Chicago winter. Stepping out, Gloria deeply breathed in the fresh morning dew scent left by the gentle April shower overnight. A smile played on her lips as she recalled the warm, secure feeling of being cuddled by her husband in bed, listening to the soothing raindrops. On her way to the car, Gloria noticed the beautiful blue wildflowers sprouting from the lawn, their resilience in the face of winter's challenges, reminding her of spring's inherent desire for renewal and fresh starts. Humming along to the tunes on the car radio, Gloria headed to the cozy coffee shop where she was meeting her friend Zara, whom she hadn't seen in a while. Zara had a son the same age as Vanessa, Gloria's daughter, and their friendship had blossomed years ago at a school event. Since then, they had remained close friends, sharing each other's joys and challenges. Zara had arrived early, securing a snug table in the corner by the window. They exchanged waves and smiles through the glass as Gloria entered. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the bustling cafe as Gloria joined the queue of customers eagerly awaiting their Colombian bliss. When Zara spotted Gloria, she rose with a grin. "Hi," they both exclaimed, sharing a warm hug before settling into their seats. "It's been too long," Gloria remarked. "How have you been?" Zara's eyes lit up as she shared updates. They reminisced about old times, chuckling at memories from school events. Stories about their children flowed, marveling at how swiftly time had flown. As they dove into conversation, Zara leaned in, lowering her voice. "Gloria," she whispered, "can you keep a secret?" "Absolutely," Gloria replied, miming locking her lips and tossing the key. "What's up?" "I probably shouldn't be telling you this," Zara confessed, excitement evident. "But I've been, seeing this guy." Gloria's coffee paused midway to her lips as she stared at her friend in surprise. "Wait, are you saying you're considering an affair?" Zara flashed a mischievous half-smile. "Well, we haven't crossed any lines yet, but I'm seriously thinking about it. It's Eric. He's different, you know? He makes me feel alive. But I'm worried he might lose interest if I don't take it further." "Wait," interjected Gloria, concern in her voice. Have you thought about the consequences? Are you ready to risk your marriage for him? Zara shrugged, a hint of nonchalance in her tone. Oh, I'm not talking about leaving Nick or anything. It's just a bit of excitement on the side. The spice of life, as they say, she remarked with a smile. And don't worry, I'd ensure Nick never found out. He'd be devastated if he knew. Plus, Eric's married too. We'd have to be discreet. Gloria grappled with a surge of anxiety, torn between her loyalty to her friend and her own moral compass. After harboring her own secret for 2 years, she decided to confide in Zara. Zara, remember a couple of years back when Darren and I went through a rough patch? He actually left me for a while, remember? Yeah, I do, but you never really opened up about it. I didn't want to pry, Zara replied. I never told anyone, and you have to swear not to breathe a word of what I'm about to tell you to another living soul, Gloria said, her tone serious. Zara nodded solemnly. Of course, Gloria, I promise. If this ever got out, it could ruin my marriage. That's why I've kept it buried. But, well, you need to hear it before you make any decisions that could jeopardize your own marriage. Gloria paused as the waitress refilled their coffee cups, then continued, her voice low and urgent. I'm probably not so different from most other married women out there. After 12 years of marriage, I started feeling, bored. Everything was becoming routine. It was like after all those years I looked around and realized, what am I doing? Where am I going? Nowhere. I felt stuck, like I had no real life of my own. Exactly, Zara interjected, her eyes showing understanding. I know exactly how you feel. Zara, I think most women experience something similar. It's not that you don't love your husband. I adore Darren with all my heart. But suddenly, it's like something's missing. I started feeling like I was slipping into a slight depression. Nothing felt exciting anymore, not even lovemaking. And it wasn't anyone's fault. Darren was doing everything he could for me, especially in the bedroom. I should have been over the moon. But nothing seemed to lift my spirits, not even school functions. Gloria took a moment to sip her coffee, gauging Zara's reaction. Seeing her friend's attentive expression, she continued, And then I met Louis Hugh. You had an affair? Zara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gloria nodded solemnly. An emotional affair? Yes. Thankfully, I came to my senses before it turned physical. Thank goodness, she added with a heavy sigh. I was at that little grocery store on Marshall Avenue one day, and there he was. Oh, Zara, he was absolutely stunning, with his rugged good looks, sandy blonde hair, and those mesmerizing blue eyes that sparkled like Robert Redford's. And tall, too. I'm certain he was well over 6 feet. Even with his clothes on, I could tell he had a nice build. I couldn't tear my eyes away from him until he caught me. Of course, I felt myself blushing as he smiled back at me. We began flirting, and it was thrilling, almost forbidden. But eventually, I snapped out of it. I needed to focus on my shopping, so I made my way to the produce aisle. As I reached for some tomatoes, I accidentally bumped into him. He looked at me with those captivating blue eyes and that charming smile and greeted me. Zara. I hate to admit it, but I could feel myself getting aroused. It was so embarrassing. I prayed he couldn't sense the scent I was giving off. I must have been blushing profusely. He offered his hand for a shake and introduced himself. Despite seeing my wedding rings, he wasn't discouraged from trying to pursue me. It was flattering to think that a man like him could be interested in me. We conversed and laughed as we moved through the aisles, collecting our groceries. At the checkout, he confidently gave me his number and proposed lunch for the following week. Zara listened intently to Gloria's narrative, finding it strangely familiar. I almost threw away his card. As I left the store, I thought, sure, we'll have a passionate love affair, and then my husband will catch us. But I didn't. What didn't you do? Zara inquired, intrigued. I didn't toss his card. I kept it in my purse. Wow. On the way home, all I could think about was Louis. Darren arrived while I was putting away the groceries. I already felt guilty, so I snapped at him when he tried to help. It was like some unconscious defense mechanism. Poor Darren just asked if something was wrong. Oh my God, what did you tell him? I lied, naturally. I said I was just a little tired from shopping. Truthfully, I was secretly ecstatic. Anyway, Gloria continued, I knew I shouldn't call him. It was wrong. I also knew I was feeling vulnerable. I kept telling myself no, but I couldn't resist. I found one of the last payphones in the city and dialed the number on his card. We agreed to meet for lunch the next day. With anticipation, Zara waited for Gloria to take another sip of coffee before proceeding. Zara, as we headed to the restaurant, my emotions were all over the place. I felt a mix of terror, excitement, and intense desire. At one point, Louis reached across the table and held my hand. I felt a strong urge to be carnal with him, but guilt or maybe fear stopped me. Nonetheless, I couldn't act on it. But Louis persisted. He subtly belittled Darren, making me question our relationship. Foolishly, I fell for it, finding myself resenting my own husband. Before I knew it, Louis had cleverly manipulated me into thinking Darren didn't appreciate me. Your situation sounds so similar, Gloria, Zara commented. That's why I'm telling you this, Zara. I want you to realize what you might be getting into. Has your guy mentioned Nick yet? Not much, Zara replied, pausing. Well, he's asked a few questions like, does your husband realize how lucky he is? Stuff like that. I understand, Gloria nodded knowingly. And now you're starting to wonder, right? Well, Zara, it's amazing how things can go unnoticed. When Darren left, he mentioned I'd been distant for over 2 months. I hadn't even realized. Same with our closeness. I couldn't feel passion with someone I felt was taking me for granted. As Gloria recounted her experience, she saw realization dawn in Zara's eyes. Think about it, Zara. What kind of man would have an affair with a married woman? Can you imagine Nick doing that? Nick? No way. He wouldn't do that, Zara firmly replied. Exactly. So why put your marriage at risk for someone like that? Gloria posed the question pointedly. As Zara pondered Gloria's words, Gloria continued her story. Anyway, we met for lunch again the next week, and with each meeting, it became harder to stay faithful to Darren. By our third lunch, he nearly convinced me to go back to his place. I sensed his frustration with my excuses, and I knew if we met for lunch once more, we'd end up in bed together. As we left the restaurant after our third lunch, I casually mentioned needing a new dress because Darren had planned a special anniversary outing. I hinted that we might go to a dance club we used to enjoy, reminiscing about our past fun there. Louis saw an opportunity and seized it. He insisted on joining us at the club, saying he'd dance with me. I cautioned him, reminding him it was our anniversary, and dancing with someone else might upset Darren. But Louis, in his arrogance, dismissed my concerns, claiming it would teach Darren a lesson. He wanted to show Darren that other men desired me, thinking it would make Darren appreciate me more. Oh my Gloria, he really showed up at Dee's? Zara asked, astonished. Gloria took a sip of her coffee before replying, He did indeed. I spotted him as soon as we arrived. Naturally, I ignored him. Darren and I were having a good time until Louis approached, asking me to dance. Oh my goodness, Zara gasped, shocked. Yep, and to make matters worse, he completely disregarded Darren, even being rude to him. Naturally, Darren was offended and gave me an ultimatum, saying I couldn't dance with Louis. You know how stubborn I can be, I said. I got upset and insisted on dancing with him anyway. Darren warned me he wouldn't be there when we finished. But who takes such threats seriously, right? Zara observed, Gloria's eyes welling with emotion as she continued. As we hit the dance floor, I confronted Louis about his behavior toward Darren. I asked why he had to be so disrespectful, to which he replied he wanted to put Darren in his place. That just made me angrier. Of course, Louis kept me close while we danced, but I was mainly concerned if Darren was watching and getting angrier. I was so preoccupied I didn't notice when the first dance ended and we started the second. When the music stopped, I told Louis no more dances. I said I was going to spend the rest of the evening with my husband. As I headed back to our table, I saw Louis trailing behind me. I demanded to know what he thought he was doing, and he said he wanted to apologize to Darren. When we got back, Darren was gone. Louis sat down and casually mentioned he'd wait with me until Darren returned. I had a sinking feeling he had no intention of apologizing. Instead, he seemed bent on stirring up trouble between Darren and me. Why would he do that? Zara asked, puzzled. What would he gain from it? I wondered, guessing he hadn't succeeded in seducing me, so he tried to create discord between Darren and me instead. He probably hoped I'd turn to him for comfort, expecting we'd end up together before the night was over. I assumed Darren had gone to the restroom. I urged Lewis to return to his table, but he hesitated. When the waitress approached, he took the chance to order drinks. It was then she asked if we wanted to start another tab. I was stunned. Darren had already paid the bill before leaving with Zara. It felt like I was witnessing my entire married life unravel. I couldn't fathom he'd left me like that. Gloria's anguish was palpable as she recounted her tale, and Zara couldn't help but feel her friend's pain. Emotions swirled within Zara, and soon a solitary tear trickled down her cheek. You don't have to tell me all this, Gloria, Zara said, her voice thick with empathy. You're upset. Maybe we should pause. No, I need to tell you everything, Zara. Gloria insisted, her resolve clear. You need the full picture, it's crucial. She paused, gathering herself. So, where was I? Right. I immediately dialed Darren, asking him to return and pick me up. That's when he dropped the bombshell. He suspected I was having an affair, possibly with Louis. He said he was considering packing a bag and leaving, uncertain if he'd come back. Gloria reached for a napkin, wiping away tears that welled in her eyes. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Zara, she continued. It was like a sudden realization. Everything became clear. It wasn't Darren taking me for granted. He'd done everything to support me. It was me. I was the one taking him, Vanessa, and our life together for granted. I realized I was risking my entire marriage for some idiot. I pleaded with Darren to return so we could talk, but he refused, so I hailed a cab. What was Lewis doing during all this? Zara asked. Oh, he wasn't giving up, not yet. He insisted Darren didn't deserve me and pressed me to go home with him instead. I shut him down promptly, she recounted with a laugh, but he persisted. He followed me outside and made advances as the cab arrived. I didn't hesitate to give him a knee to the groin. Doubled over in pain, I warned further contact would lead to a closeness intimidation lawsuit. Zara reached out, gripping her friend's hand as Gloria brushed away more tears. By the time I got home, Darren was gone. I tried calling, but his phone was off. Zara, I was terrified. I could see my marriage crumbling before my eyes. Everything we'd built, our whole family, seemed on the brink of collapse. I've never been so scared. The next day, I tried reaching him at work, but he refused to talk. His secretary said he'd instructed not to see me if I came by. Feeling desperate, I turned to Andrea, my neighbor. Given Darren's good relationship with her and her husband, I hoped she might convince him to talk to me. Surprisingly, he did speak to her, but only to express the need for time to think and to promise to contact me in a couple of weeks. Understanding that pressuring him would backfire, I opted to grant him the space he requested. Those 2 weeks were agonizing. Whenever Vanessa was around, I forced a facade of strength, telling her that Daddy was away. But in private, tears flowed freely. I feared I had irreversibly damaged our bond. Gloria paused, her voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry, she said to Zara, wiping tears. It's still hard to discuss even now. Taking a deep breath, she resumed her narrative. As I was saying, Darren finally called and said he was coming home. Zara, I was on the brink of losing everything, and let me tell you, it made me realize the worth of what I had and how incredibly lucky I was. Ultimately, Zara, love must triumph over desire. I love Darren and he loves me. In my view, no man is worth risking that for. Wow, Zara responded thoughtfully. You're absolutely right. I can't imagine what I would do if my husband left me. Did you ever confess the truth to Darren? Are you kidding? After nearly losing him, I couldn't risk a repeat. Zara, I live in constant fear of him uncovering the truth. But since he returned home, I've worked hard to be the best wife I can be. I no longer take him or our marriage for granted. Every day I count my blessings and express my gratitude to Darren with all my heart. I can only hope it's enough if he ever does learn the truth." Zara squeezed Gloria's hand reassuringly. "I'm so thankful you shared your story with me, Gloria. You've saved me from a huge mistake. Thank you." The two friends talked a bit longer, then tentatively set their next meeting before saying goodbye. Gloria felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing she had just steered her friend away from a disastrous choice. She made it home just in time to welcome her daughter with a kiss and a snack after school. "Vanessa is growing up so fast," she reflected. "She'll be 10 soon. Where does the time go?" When Darren returned from work, Gloria greeted her husband with warm hugs and kisses. Until that day, she had never brought up the topic of their challenging period in their marriage. Talking to Zara reminded her of the wonderful life she and Darren had built together. Later that night, with Darren peacefully sleeping beside her, Gloria turned on her side and propped herself up on her elbow. She studied the lines on his face, each representing the passage of time and cherished memories. With gentle fingers, she traced a few of the newer lines, feeling affection and admiration for the man beside her. Softly, Gloria kissed him. As their kiss deepened, Darren's lips curved into a wide smile. He embraced his beloved wife tightly, returning her affection with a passionate kiss. "I thought you were asleep," Gloria whispered. "Actually, I was thinking about what to get Vanessa for her birthday," he replied. "Do you know what she really needs?" "What?" Gloria asked. "A baby brother or sister," Darren declared. Though not entirely surprising, the suggestion of expanding their family brought a smile to Gloria's face. It seemed her husband had made the decision for them. "Well, her birthday is only 2 months away, honey. Shouldn't we start?" Gloria teased. Darren's grin widened. "You read my mind." 2 months later, Vanessa celebrated her 10th birthday with a big party in the backyard. Mom and Dad invited all her friends, making sure there was plenty of ice cream and cake for everyone. After the festivities, Gloria and Darren surprised their daughter with another special gift and the joyful news of an upcoming baby brother.